here, right? Leo's going to be a little bit, oh, no, he's there.
Leo's going to join us and then
he's here.
So start?
Yeah, go ahead. Thank you.
Okay, sure.
So I think we're live, right? We have attendees, great. So I'm going to call to order the open session meeting January 12th. And can we have a roll call?
Student Board Member Corzo Clark.
Here.
Student Board Member Mala.
Here.
Trustee Boyd.
Here.
Trustee Davidson.
Here.
Trustee Duran.
Here.
Vice President Doss.
Here.
President Hinckley.
Here.
Superintendent Wells.
Here.
Okay.
And now we move to the Pledge of Allegiance, which I will read. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And can we have the students read our mission and vision statement?
Yes. The mission of Albany Unified School District is to provide excellent public education that empowers all to achieve their fullest potential as productive citizens. AUSD is committed to creating comprehensive learning opportunities in a safe, supportive, and collaborative environment, addressing the individual needs of each student.
Our meeting norms are to maintain a focus on what is best for our students, to ensure a safe environment for all views to be expressed, treating each other, staff, and the public respectfully, to endeavor to find common solutions to issues through collaboration without sacrificing one's belief in what is best for students, and to make a commitment to effective deliberation, each one listening with an open mind while others are allowed to express their points of view.
Thank you. There was no action taken tonight in closed session. And now we need a motion to approve the agenda or a discussion of any changes board members would like to make to the agenda.
President Hinckley?
Yes.
I wanted to request if under the consent calendar, if we could pull 9-1 in order for the board to have some discussion around it before voting on it.
Yeah, so we can do that when we get to item 9. Great. So I just need a motion to approve our agenda for tonight, which is blessedly short.
I move that we
motion to approve our agenda.
I'll second Ms. Davidson, Trustee Davidson.
And we need a roll call.
Student Board Member Corzo Clark.
Yes.
Student Board Member Mala.
Yes.
Vice President Doss.
Yes.
President Hinckley.
Yes.
Trustee Boyd.
Yes.
Trustee Davidson.
Yes.
And Trustee Duran.
Yes.
Thank you.
Great. So item 7, our spotlight for tonight, a report on Martin Luther King Jr. I'm going to hand it over to Superintendent Wells to introduce that.
Thank you, President Hinckley. Tonight we are have the good fortune to have our student leaders, our student trustees, both Leo Corzo Clark and Albany Mala School Board student trustees present to us a reflection and an appreciation for Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. So at this time, I pass the baton over to our senior board member, Albany Mala.
Thank you. I'll wait for, okay, there we go. Yeah, so as Superintendent Wells said, the spotlight is to recognize the leadership and life of Dr. King. And this is very timely because Monday, January 18th, is Martin Luther King Jr. Day. So the day is off for both students and faculty across AUSD. You can move to the next slide.
Yeah, so to give a quick background on Dr. King. So Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was an American Baptist minister and civil rights activist who became the most visible spokesperson and leader in the civil rights movement from 1955 until his death in 1968. Dr. King is best known for advancing civil rights through nonviolence and civil disobedience, inspired by his Christian beliefs as a minister and the nonviolent activism of Mahatma Gandhi, which he studied. Dr. King played a part in many well-known civil rights movements in the 50s and 60s, such as the boycott of the Montgomery City bus system and the Memphis sanitation workers strike. Next slide.
So we wanted to highlight a few of his major accomplishments. So first, the March on Washington, in which Dr. King led over 200,000 people. And the march was organized by Dr. King and other civil rights activists and labor and religious organizations. The Montgomery Bus Boycott occurred or started on the same day that Rosa Parks was arrested. And this was a boycott on the Montgomery bus system, and this lasted over a year. The Birmingham campaign was a boycott on local businesses to pressure them to desegregate. And although the boycott initially failed, Dr. King and the Southern Christian Leadership Conference started Project C, which was a series of sit-ins and marches. And then lastly, one of the many accomplishments that Dr. King had, he was honored with the Nobel Peace Prize in 1964. And this was for his leadership of nonviolent tactics in the civil rights era.
Next slide. So we celebrate Martin Luther King Day to honor the life and legacy of Dr. King, who was instrumental in the way he led the movement of civil rights by placing his life on the line for freedom and justice every day in hope of reform. Albany Unified School District ensures that this day is taken off for both students and faculty, and encourage everyone on this day next Monday to reflect on ways to be both civically engaged and improve upon communities to continue the life and legacy of Dr. King. Thank you. This concludes our presentation spotlight.
Great, thank you so much. We need audience clapping that we can feed into these meetings since we don't have a real audience. Great, so we will now move on to a related item. Item 8, recognition, our latest resolution.
President Hinckley, can we pause and go back? You might want to give the board members an opportunity to reflect or respond to the presentation about Dr. King and his legacy and contribution in his life. I'm sure we have some board members here who may want to comment about the presentation that was just presented.
Of course.
I think it's important to recognize Dr. King for everything that he did, and I'm glad that we do it each year. One thing that Dr. King made very important was that the accomplishments and the contributions of many Black people are important, and he shined a light on that often, and that our contributions then and still to this day make the world a better place. And so, I always like to reflect on that, and I appreciate the student board members for presenting that, and thank you for taking the time to put that together, and for understanding the importance of the legacy of Dr. King.
I would also like to thank the student board members for sharing that presentation and allowing us to reflect on Dr. King's legacy. I recall when I was younger, understanding the age at which he died, which, if I'm remembering correctly, was 39. And then that sounding old at the time. And then as I passed 39 and got older than that, understanding what it means to have accomplished so much in such a small number of years. It's painful to think of what he could have offered if he had been allowed to continue with his work. But it really stops me in my tracks to think about in his 20s and in his 30s, the sort of foresight, the immense sacrifice, and also respect for fellow humans, which is so often lacking right now, even when people are having a difference of opinion. And he talked about the importance of being able to disagree while still having respect for oneself and for others. So I would just say that I am incredibly grateful for the legacy that he has left us with, and I appreciate being able to take this time to reflect on that.
I will just say 2 years ago, back when we could still travel, I lived in Atlanta for some time, and we took our kids through a tour of the South and visited Ebenezer Baptist Church, where King preached. And I think the election of Georgia's first Black senator last week, which was, of course, overshadowed by everything that happened right after that, says a lot both about how long it is still taking to realize the hope that King had for our country, and also a reminder that we're, there are moments of joy and celebration for us that are because of his legacy, that has created this movement that is bringing forward not just Black Americans, not just Georgians, not just Southerners, but all of us, perhaps kicking and screaming into the 21st century, quite literally. I have more to say later about everything that happened last week, but I've been thinking a lot about what Martin Luther King gave us and how that promise is still being made for us every day, and just wanting to celebrate some of what he's given us, even though there's still so far to go.
President Hinckley, I don't know if you can see it, but on my screen I have Trustee Duran hand up for a while.
Yeah, she's going.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to say that Martin Luther King Jr. left a powerful legacy that still vibrates today. His actions, the nonviolent movement, and I wonder what he would think of today, how he would respond to the current events in the Capitol. And I just know that he would want all of us to be united, to be one in, I guess I would say, brotherhood and sisterhood, and really realize that we do have to speak our truth to the powers, and he would absolutely be right there telling us, encouraging us to do the right thing today. And so I think we all need to lift our voices with his and all his beautiful sermons and words from jail, and just recognize that such a beautiful person continues in the hearts of us today. And I'm happy that, we celebrate it as a holiday, but at the same time, I almost wish kids were in school, because then we could really talk more about it. I know that students oftentimes feel that they know about Martin Luther King, but there was different parts of him that I think none of us know adequately enough unless we really study him. And I hope that the teachers will take an opportunity to really go over with the kids the powerful impact that this man had on all of us and our civil rights.
Thank you. And Trustee Davidson.
Thank you to our student board members for putting that together and for everyone's really, really strong words and reminders about Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. It's a name that we hear often in education for many of us, but I think it's a name that we can remind ourselves of more frequently as we navigate our own daily decisions, and just let his words reverberate more frequently when we're considering how to respond, how to react, especially right now when there are so many situations that are reminiscent of what he experienced. And, you know, as somebody who didn't have those same experiences, it was always a really powerful thing for me to read and hear his story and look at just life and experiences from a different perspective. And I appreciate this chance in January, which is a challenging month, but sets the tone for our year, to remember that and sort of make a new resolution or a new vision to start this year with a little bit more of his words as guidance.
Thank you.
I'm so sorry. Can I just say one more thing that I
Yeah,
forgot to say when I spoke before? I just wanted to say, I think it's so important what I think has been happening in recent months and years to claim the parts of Dr. King that were the most incendiary and revolutionary, and that we're not interested in accepting the status quo. I think that there are often attempts to highlight and only talk about all of us holding hands and all of us, you know, having this shared humanity, and that is extremely important. And the strength to preach nonviolence and to practice nonviolence and to take the blows of that is immense. But I think that it's also important, while we're acknowledging that and the brotherhood and the togetherness, to also remember that he spoke very strongly against statements that we should be waiting. You know, he's talked about the white moderate and the white liberal and the importance of not accepting certain things. And he also was not widely followed, or, you know, it's easy to think of him now as someone who everyone can get behind. And but at the time, his methods and his positions were not mainstream. And so I just wanted to say that it's important to be sure that we're claiming all of those everything that he stood for, and all of those aspects of how he tried to bring us forward as a society.
Great, thank you so much. So we have, our next item is somewhat related to this item, which is recognition, one of our resolutions of our proclaiming February 2021 as African American History Month. I will turn it over to you, Dr. Wells.
I guess I'll introduce this one.
I believe so.
Yes, I thought so. This is our,
Okay.
what I would have to, we started it last year and now moved it to our annual resolution before our official month of February African American History Month resolution. And tonight this will be presented as scheduled by the Black Parents Association President Linda Williams. And so I think we're going to either have it come to the, I'm thinking of the podium like we're and face to face, but come up as a panelist to do so. Do we have her here?
Yes, I'm here. Oh, sorry about my background. Yes,
Well,
I'm here. Hello?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay.
Do you want the resolution on the screen?
I'm
Yeah.
gonna pull it up on my screen so I can read it better.
Okay, Julie, do you mind? Great, thank you.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me here. Albany Unified School District Board of Education, resolution number 2020-21-12, proclaiming February 2021 as African American History Month. Whereas Americans of African descent helped develop our nation in countless ways, those recognized, unrecognized, and unrecorded. Whereas African American history reflects a determined spirit of perseverance, cultural pride, innovation, and trends in its struggle to equally share in the opportunities of a nation founded upon the principles of freedom and liberty for all people one day. Whereas in 1976, Black History Month was established as a month-long celebration to reflect on the history, teachings, and achievements of African Americans. Whereas the history and contributions of African American citizens have consistently been overlooked, misinterpreted, and undervalued in the curriculum of public education institutions prior to the Civil Rights Act of 1964. And whereas the history social science framework for California public schools, transitional kindergarten through grade 12, states that the history curriculum of community, state, region, nation, and world must reflect the experiences of men and women of different racial, religious, and ethnic groups, and must be integrated at every level now, therefore. Be it resolved that the Albany Unified School District Board of Education proclaims the month of February 2021 as African American History Month and encourages all district schools to commemorate this occasion with the appropriate instructional activities. Passed and adopted by the governing board of the Albany Unified School District on this 12th day of January 2021 by the following vote.
Great, thank you so much, Ms. Williams. So this is an action item, although it's not under review and action. We do need a motion to approve this resolution.
I move to approve resolution number 2020-21-12, proclaiming February 2021 as African American History Month.
I second.
I'll do a roll call vote. Student Board Member Corzo Clark,
Yes.
Student Board Member Mala,
Yes.
President Hinckley,
Yes.
Trustee Boyd,
Yes.
Trustee Davidson,
Yes.
Trustee Duran,
Yes.
Vice President Doss.
Yes.
Thank you.
Great, the resolution passes unanimously. And I just want to thank Ms. Williams again for reading the resolution for us. This is an important commitment that our district makes every year. And I think we all know, we've heard from students and other groups about the importance of continuing to expand the depth with which we bring this material to our students, not just in February, but year round. And so we appreciate this reminder for ourselves. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Item 9 is the consent calendar. I know Trustee Duran wants to discuss item 9-1. Before we do that, are there any other board questions or items that you'd want to pull off the consent calendar? Okay, hearing none. Trustee Duran, do you have a specific question about 9-1, or would you like it presented separately by someone from the staff?
Both. I just kind of, when I saw the item, you know, I felt on one hand that it was really important because I know that I, speaking personally, have very high expectations from what I want from or expect from our district office staff. You know, always asking for information, you know, on time. Here's some more projects or ideas. And I do have to stop and recognize how overwhelming things have become, not only because of the pandemic, but because there are so few people in the district office. I know we chopped away at it a couple years ago, and yet our expectations for what we demand from central office still remains at a high level. And there are other districts, larger districts, that have a whole lot more staff in their district offices. But you know what? Albany is small, but we still are required to do all these things for the students, for the state of California. And I think it's time that we recognize that we ask the same 5 people to do all this work. And so when it came up, I said, oh, this is an opportunity to assist the staff. And so I just wanted to, but at the same time, I had a couple of issues. And so I was hoping that our Chief Human Resources Officer, Marina Gonzalez, if she could address the issue about the position specifically and how it would help.
Sorry, can I interrupt just for a second? Can you just state what position you're asking about?
Oh, I'm so very sorry.
Thank you.
Sorry, everybody. The position is the support services coordinator. Okay, that was on the 9-1. And so I wish if Ms. Gonzalez would be able to articulate more how that position would help the current staff. And then also I wanted to ask the Chief Business Officer if she could talk about the finances and how that would impact on the district budget.
Okay, can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay, so this position, the support services coordinator, where the support services being the district office that supports all sites. This position is, you might call it sort of like a, well, like a utility position. There's the duties are broad. And that is intended to help this position to be versatile in terms of the number of departments that this position can support. Really, we as a team have identified an area that we really would like to improve. So in the immediate future, we'd like to see improvement in communications. And under that umbrella, communication to the community in the form of letters or updates going out to our parents and staff even. An increased presence on social media as another way of making sure that we're reaching as many community members as possible. Another area that our team has really expressed a desire to improve upon is our website, making sure that we're current and timely in our updates on our website. And even things that are sort of on the horizon, well, not too far out, but coming around quickly, are things like, our recruitment efforts for interdistrict transfer permits, and being able to get ahead of that, and not be so late in the game as we have experienced a little bit of in the last couple of years. And just ongoing communication efforts. So many times, as Trustee Duran mentioned, we have a lot on our plates, and so we are trying to work as a team to make decisions, to move certain actions forward, and at the same time trying to keep our AUSD community informed. And so sometimes that means that our communication maybe is not meeting the needs of all of our community members, and so we're trying to improve on that piece immediately, and later being able to expand other supports that this position can provide to our various departments here at the district office.
And just to clarify, so this is a newly created position that didn't exist before, it sounds like, or that wasn't filled before.
Right, and just for everyone's understanding, so it's a classification that has been approved by the board in the past. It was approved, so it exists in terms of the classification, which is why you're not seeing a brand new job description coming to the board. It just hasn't been in use, and we are activating it, if you will, to be able to use this classification to fill a position, if that makes sense.
And then there was a second part to the question, which was the financial impact.
Sure. So there are a few positions in district office that we were not able to fill in, or were not able to find a person for the type of work that we need here. So as we all know that the budget changes daily, almost daily basis. So we are going to move or shift the money from those positions to this position. And that's how we will handle the budget for this position.
Does that answer your questions, Trustee Duran?
Yes, thank both of you.
So we can leave this as part of the consent calendar and vote on it, the whole thing, or entertain any other kind of motion. Or Trustee Das, do you have a question?
Yeah, I had a couple of questions. One for clarification. Is now, if we have like additional questions, would it be appropriate to continue discussing and to ask those additional questions? Or does it make sense to pull this portion of that item, vote on the rest of it if there's a consensus there, and then ask additional questions and give staff time to come back with answers? Or what's the best way or the most efficient way to move forward?
So we could take a motion to approve the whole consent calendar, or we could take a motion to pull this item from the consent calendar and approve the consent calendar without it, and then do a vote just on this, just on that position, just on item 9-1.
Okay. I'd like to make a motion to do the latter, to remove this portion of it and to approve or to vote for the remainder of the consent calendar, and then allow for more discussion on this specific portion.
So is that a motion to approve items 9-2, 9-3, and 9-4 as part of the consent calendar?
Yes.
Okay, so I can take a second on that and then we can vote. And then we'll come back to item 9-1.
Second.
Okay, roll call vote on this. Student board member Corzo Clark.
He had to leave for a little bit. And
Oh, thank you. I didn't see him duck out. Thanks. Student board member Mala.
Yes.
Trustee Boyd.
Yes.
Trustee Davidson.
Yes.
Trustee Jordan.
Yes.
Vice President Doss.
Yes.
Trustee Hinckley.
Yes. So those items pass unanimously, and we will now reopen discussion for item 9-1. Did you want to ask your questions, Trustee Doss?
Sure, that'd be great. Thank you so much. Well, my first question is, which positions, you said that money was moved from different places to kind of make this position whole, so to speak. So I'm wondering which positions those were and where that came from. And then the other question I had was, you said that the board recently approved this position, or was it prior to this? I guess my question is that the board, was it the previous board, or when was this position approved? Or because I don't, yeah.
So the job description / classification was approved in 2011. So it's just been in our library of classifications that we can use, as opposed to sometimes when we are creating a brand new classification job description that's never existed before, we then need to bring it to the board for approval. So
Okay.
It's just been in our library, if you will.
Okay, so that brings me to two follow-up questions. One, if it was approved and we haven't had it for 10 years, why now? And secondly, because it's been so long, is there an option for the board to vote on it, or more recently, based on in the past 10 years, we've had budget changes, and that just seems like a really long time for a position to not kind of be active. So is there room for the current board to receive information about how our current budget is set up, how this would affect that current budget, how this affects how things are now versus 10 years ago, and then for us to vote on it based on more recent information versus what was happening 10 years ago?
So I would say that I think these are sort of two different things. When we are hiring for a position, the employee has a right to have a job description that has been approved by the board with the list of essential duties. And that's in place for many reasons, some of which might be for future if we ever need to discuss what those essential duties are and evaluation and those sort of things. So we need to have an approved job description with an approved salary schedule that's been associated with it, and then what the requirements are and all of that. So if the duties are still applicable to the current day, and we can say that these duties as described will apply in the here and now, in my opinion, I don't think that there's a need to create a new job description. But I think the second part of your question about whether the board should be discussing the legitimacy of the need for the position. I think that's beyond my purview.
I can add for the budget part that trustee or vice president requested. So
We're having a hard time hearing you. I don't think it's just me. If you
Sorry.
could speak a little louder. Thank you.
Sure. So I can address the next question that Vice President Doss asked. So for the budget wise, so we district office had a vacancies for a few positions. Both are clerical positions. One position is more of advertising and promoting for the our IDTs and other communications, and also there's another position for a clerical position at the district office that we were not able to fill in because we couldn't find a person who can maybe fit into that position. So finally, we have found a person who can do the job. So then we are shifting the position to the right categories or better categories. So that's how the budget is moving, and which is almost daily basis, right? Whenever we spend money or we repurpose the any categories to the others. So that's just one of the items.
So I just want to maybe bring us back to what the substance, I think part of the substance of the discussion is. So the district office is routinely making adjustments in staffing based on all kinds of things: enrollment, need, who applies for positions, how the work is getting done, things that come up. And the board traditionally intervenes only in certain circumstances. So one is if it's a director level position, the board is often involved in discussions about whether that's, both how the position is defined and whether we want to allocate funds for that. Or at certain points in the budget cycle, we have conversations about the reduction of certain positions and how to make budget trade-offs. But typically over the course of a year, we wouldn't intervene in these kinds of decisions about adding staff to meet needs or invoking certain job descriptions that may have been dormant in order to meet a particular need. I believe that part of the attention that we want to give to this position is that the person that's being proposed to fill it is the former president of the school board, and that people want to make sure there is a lot of transparency about how a position that hasn't been used was decided to be opened. We know that it was open to all applicants and that there was an application process, and that the person that was chosen was an outcome of that process. But I just want to be very clear about why I think board members are asking for a level of scrutiny about this position. But just for, I think, the public and for the new board members, we do not normally go through the personnel assignment order and question each decision about positions at this level, partly because I think it would cripple the district if the board was constantly reviewing job descriptions and so forth. But I also want to just make clear why I think many of us want to ensure that there is a lot of transparency around this particular process. So I can't speak to whether that addresses the questions that have been raised so far, but I just wanted to state why I think there's a lot of attention happening here. So I do want to see if there are other questions. I know Trustee Doss is busy with something much more important, like getting his baby to sleep. But I just want to give everyone an opportunity to ask any other questions before we do need to vote on this item. Trustee Davidson, and then we'll go back to Trustee.
I wanted to thank you for that level of clarification, because when in reading this more closely, that red flag was raised for me as well. I know that there had been a need for someone to help with communications in the district a while back, and I wasn't sure if that position had been filled or not. And I'm just making sure. It seems interesting to rework a position perhaps to fit a potential applicant, or was the position description rewritten prior to all of that? I think it's a little bit surprising to have this created all of a sudden and then filled and then voted on. But I appreciate all of the sort of background information that normally we don't give this level of scrutiny. So if anyone can just answer, the description was sent out. I saw that prior to the position and it was changed prior, or did we make adaptations at all after, based on that we knew potential people were applying or anything, or is that a question I can't really ask?
So let's see. The job description has been in existence for a while. So we didn't make changes to that. But sort of what Jackie was talking about, where we've had some allocation on the books for support that we either have had difficulty filling, and it's not uncommon to say, we've struggled with finding attracting candidates that really are able to bring the skill set that we need. So we sort of went looking in our library, I'll keep calling it that, for something that might be more suitable, that might be able to attract what we're looking for. And so working within our same pot of money, right? We have the one pot of money, and finding a way to make this position work in hopes that we can attract, like I said, the skill set that we are looking for to provide the level of support that we need.
Let me add. In addition to that, it's important that we look at the big picture and that we don't just have rhetoric, but we have real goals for the district, and we have 3 of those. One of which is student achievement. The next one is the whole child, how we address their social and emotional needs. And the third final goal is communication. And I've been saying these goals without resources is just rhetoric. So we have resources for student achievement. We have resources for the whole child, and no resources for communication, and yet communication is our big challenge. And so we either put resources in those areas of where the goals are, or we can't ever meet that need and meet that goal that we set out for ourselves, called communication. And so this is only a fraction of what some of our neighboring districts do in the area of communication, some of which have $1 million plus for communication. And then we often wonder why we have so many communication challenges. So here's a really great opportunity to, at a minimum cost, to address our communication needs and challenges. And I wanted to put that out there because one of my goals, and it's public, is communication. And you can't really meet that goal at a satisfactory rate that we expect in our great city of Albany unless we have adequate resources behind that. And this is a piece of, a small piece of what we need to be the kind of district we ought to be years ago. And so we don't just want to have a goal with no resources behind it, because it just become rhetoric, and I can't be held accountable for something that I can't have resources to support, so that we can have the kind of communication that our board wants and desire and that our community deserves.
Trustee Doss, did you have another question?
I did have a couple of additional questions. One being that this sounds similar to something that the board voted on a while back. I believe we had to have our meeting at the high school, and we were having discussions around communication. And I don't remember the exact date, but we voted on like communication, and that the numbers started off higher. And by the time we finished the discussion, it was a much lower number, but it was to address the same issue of communication. So I'm wondering how this position differs from that, where we voted on to spend a certain amount of money on communication. I understand that other districts have a larger budget for communication. But Albany is very small. I mean, I could tell somebody something tomorrow at the coffee shop, and then by the time I got to my house, everybody in Albany would know what I said. Like, it's very small community, and it's like a funny example, but I don't know if there's like a big, with all the budget constraints and things that we have happening, seems a little that we've kind of already addressed this need. So I'm wondering how this is different from that. And then my other question being for clarification based on what President Hinckley was saying, that we don't usually get involved in these matters, but that this is kind of a unique circumstance. And in that this position is being filled by former president, that the position was dormant for 10 years and the timeline seems very convenient. So we're being transparent. That makes a lot of sense. So my second follow-up question would be kind of what are the next steps, or how do we move forward, or what do we, how does that, do we just kind of discuss and then go, or?
I can answer the first part of your question, just recalling the high school meeting. So at that time, the superintendent requested funds not for a position that was openly advertised, but for a specific person to perform just communication, a very specific set of communication tasks for us. And the board ended up approving a certain amount, which was in the end not used. This position is different in that the description at least encompasses a whole bunch of duties, not just communications. And it was actually publicly advertised as a job, not a contract. That may be neither here nor there for you, but that's just the difference between what was proposed back then. I think the other concerns I still hear, I think, are more about process. I think both what your second question and Trustee Davidson, there's the question of whether we have the money for this position and whether this is the right set of tasks, which I think is, at least for me, something that is the superintendent's prerogative to decide. But I think your last question is more about the sort of timing of the process. So maybe Superintendent Wells, you could just speak a little bit to that. And then our next step is, this is a position that has been created and an offer has been made. So we do need a vote at some point on this item to approve it. And Superintendent Wells, you can speak more to that as well.
Okay, well, I'm assuming speaking to the process. Okay, let me turn it over to, I'm going to pass the baton to our Chief Human Resource Officer, but we adhered, as I get items forwarded to me, we adhere to our typical normal process whereby we advertise, had a number of candidates apply, a number of them were interviewed, they were ranked according to what we're supposed to do by law, and we have to keep records of those rankings in case any candidate for X number of years want to challenge that. And so what I require is that typically I like to have the top 2 or top 3, depending on how big the pool is, sent to me and I make the final call, unless it's a lopsided number 1 kind of, and I don't want to get into all the details, we go with that. And I typically do that with classified, and this is a classified position. And so it adhered to the regular rules and regs as it relates to a process required by law for us to adhere to. And a committee selected the top candidate, forwarded to me, and I forwarded to the board. And so we adhered to, we didn't deviate from our regular process. We adhere to our typical and ongoing process. And we take that very seriously because we can be held accountable and penalized if we were found doing something even remotely close to deviating from those kinds of requirements.
Trustee Davidson, did you have another question? Your virtual hand is up.
Sorry, it's hidden in the corner.
Okay, that's all right.
No, I'm okay. Thank you.
President Hinckley, did you see that there is somebody in attendance that wanted to speak, I believe, on this item?
I did not. Can we allow that person to speak? I have some meeting controls, but not all of them. It's Amy Appel.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for being here tonight. I don't want to second guess the administration's personnel decisions too much, but the question this position raises in my mind is, why is this funding for a position being used for an administrative position rather than a student-facing position? Thank you.
I just want to give clarification. I think we have, just so that we can kind of clear up the misinformation out there, this is not an administrative position. This is a classified position, not non-management.
Not non-management class. I mean, that makes sense. I mean, but is it student facing?
I'm sorry. Can you repeat the great question? Is it student based? What was the question?
Well, our audience member, she was kind of making the point that this position, is it student facing? Is this position, are they going to be working directly with students, or are they going to be working at the district office?
It's going to be working around the district office. Typically, like our administrative assistant, Julie Shin here, she works around it. She's a district office support that does major work in key areas, one of which is what she's doing tonight.
So I think that was Amy's point, is that why did the district make the decision for this position versus a position that would be directly facing and impacting students? I think was the point, not necessarily yeah.
Well, we have 3 goals, 2 of which is directly related to students, and the third is communication. And we take these goals very seriously, and we needed to step up based on all accounts, and including our board members, our communication arena. And this is a strategy for addressing that area with a big hole as we begin to fill that hole to provide the kind of communication that our board wants and our community deserves. And this kind of communication will be filtered down to both staff, students, and parents in the form of our quarterly newsletters and reports that would be professionalized and those kinds of things that really speak volumes about a district, including updated, modernized, and timely websites for our district.
So I do think we need to move this toward a motion. There is one more public comment, and then I'll bring it back to the board.
Hi, good evening. This is Jeremiah. I was wondering for a possible substitute music teacher. Does anybody remember Jingle Jeff? I don't know if he's still driving his red car. I'm not sure if he still has a shop up on Ordway in Solano, but maybe if someone can get a hold of Jingle Jeff, see what he's up to make sure, maybe he could be a volunteer substitute music teacher. But I know Jingle Jeff, he'd probably be pretty interested. That's it for my public comment. Thank you.
Great. So I'd like to see if there's if someone wants to make a motion to approve this item.
I move that we approve this item 9-1 for the support services coordinator.
Well, actually, it would be for all the whole certificate. Excuse me, personnel assignment order.
Okay, very good. Thank you for
yeah.
that. correction.
Hold on, President Clinky, clarification, President Hinckley. You already approved the first 3 of the 4, and this is done separately.
But
we
there's
approved
also,
items 9.2 to 9.4, but
That's
this
right.
whole personnel assignment order has not been approved yet.
so I'll clean up my motion to say that I move that the board approve the consent calendar 9-1.
Point of clarification.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure I catch it before we vote. Within this, are we able to, do all 3 have to be done together, or can it be separated?
Her motion is to do the whole personnel assignment order.
But
we need.
Yeah, I know we need to follow through with her motion, but are we able to, if her motion doesn't pass, are we able to, is it able to be separated, or does it have to be all 3?
If her motion didn't pass, then we could do a revised motion related to the assignment order.
Okay, thanks for the clarification.
Yeah. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Roll call vote. Student Board Member Mala.
Yes.
Trustee Davidson, we'll start with you this time.
Yes.
Okay. Trustee Duran.
Yes.
Vice President Doss.
No.
President Hinckley.
Yes.
Trustee Boyd.
No.
So the motion passes for item 9-1 with 2 no votes, Trustee Doss and Trustee Boyd. So that concludes our consent calendar. We are on to item 10, Superintendent and Board Members Reports. So we'll start with you, Dr. Walls.
Tonight, I have a brief superintendent's report that's coming up shortly, but just a reminder of some very important calendar dates. 3 items. The first item is, we talked about it early. We're honoring Dr. King in the form of no school, an official legal holiday this coming Monday, January 18th. There's a number of community service projects in our respective community that I encourage us to consider participating in. Also, another big day here in Albany. I learned last year that staff take a moment to celebrate the 100th day of school, which would be February 3rd, in less than a month. And then February 15th to the 19th, we have our midwinter break. These are just reminders. And then March 12th, there's no school, but it's staff professional development. And then April 12th to the 16th, we have our spring break. And then May 31st is the Memorial Day, and our last day of school, and we have graduations around this time, would be June the 11th. My second item is an update on some hubs. As many of you guys know, we have our preschool hubs, and as promised, we resumed those last week, when we started school on January 4th. And then we're in the process of establishing 2 additional types of in-person hubs, our mental health and our internet support hubs. Our mental health in person, we're looking at one-on-one session for our students, times to be determined. Target date here is February 1st, consistent with our regular target dates. It's important to note that although we're in the purple and precluded from opening up classrooms, but we can open up hubs if we meet the criteria. And then for those hubs, we would also provide breakfast and lunch for our kids who are selected. We're in the process of establishing a referral and selection process with input from key stakeholders. Our key stakeholders include teachers, administrators, classified, and some parents about the best ways to determine a selection process for kids in need. Stay tuned, more to come on that. And then our internet support hubs would include what I just spoke of and provide breakfast and lunch for those hubs that would come 4 days a week. For example, at the elementary school, Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday, Friday, from 9 to 12. And again, we're establishing a referral and selection process here as well, with a target date again for February 1st. Summer school. Some may say, hey, summer school, we're far away, but not really. This year, because of COVID-19, we have a lot of learning mitigation to work on. And so we're going to have what we call summer school for all. Now, what does that mean? Does that mean all the kids get to come? No, not at all. It means that we are addressing a wide range of kids' needs. We're going to have interventions. We're going to have our credit recovery. And this year, we're going to have a number of enrichment classes for both kids who are taking intervention and credit recovery, or just some kids who want to take our enrichment classes. Another enrichment class would be recreation and connectedness, as we try to use this year of recovery and reconnecting in that spirit. And then finally, section E3E, a summer school presentation is forthcoming, currently planning. Stay tuned for more information. That concludes my superintendent report this evening.
Thank you. So I will make my report, which is, I thought this was going to be a short meeting. It still will. But so I will ask your indulgence for a minute because I wanted to say something about what happened last week. So tonight was the first night that I had to recite the Pledge of Allegiance as the board president myself, which in Zoom meetings means I'm the only person that anyone can hear doing it. The pledge is recited at most public meetings in our country, including before each meeting of the United States Congress and Senate when they meet. In normal times, board members and our attendees have taken a range of approaches to the Pledge of Allegiance. At least one other board member with me declines to say the words "under God," words that were added to the pledge in the 1950s during the era of McCarthyism. Others of us have at times declined to recite it at all, joining the many Americans who have declined to participate in displays of patriotism in order to call attention to the structural racism and oppression on which America was founded and which persists today. These acts of protest are vital for our country, but have often been met with further repression. The events at the US Capitol last week made this seemingly minor issue particularly poignant for me. What does it mean to pledge allegiance to a flag that is carried by violent insurrectionists incited by our president, and that also flies above the Capitol where our legislators are trying to uphold democracy while under siege? What does our allegiance to the integrity of democracy require of us? What does it mean to say that our nation is indivisible when part of our nation continues to celebrate a racist sedition, when the flag of that confederacy was carried for the first time in our history into our nation's capital this last week? And of course, what does it mean to recite the words liberty and justice for all in a country where the project of emancipation, equality, liberty, and justice is so incomplete, as we talked about earlier this evening? As the only person with an unmuted microphone during the pledge, I wanted to be honest about my ambivalence. I also want to say I appreciated the opportunity to recite the pledge this week in recognition of the fragility of our democracy as our government grapples with an unprecedented backlash to the new America that is being created, much of which is in the footsteps of, and thanks to the person we honored earlier tonight, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. We have been reminded that democracy and progress toward justice is not guaranteed. For me, the work that we do as a board and that our teachers and our staff do represents our collective pledge to keep working towards the promise of liberty and justice for all someday, and to stand up for the true potential of our country, as embodied most recently by millions of voters in Georgia who put the first Black senator from that state in office, the state that is the seat of the that was the seat of the Confederacy in this country. So I just wanted to ask your indulgence to explain some of what I think many of our students and teachers experienced last week, trying to grapple with this conflicted nature of what it means to be trying to wrestle for the future of our country right now. So that's part of my report. I also just wanted to say last week we had a board workshop on governance that was great. I'm really excited about our board working together and already taking shape to learn from each other. And also last week, for those of you who don't know, the governor issued his budget proposal on Friday, which had a lot of good news for education. If that comes to fruition, the state's budget is in much better shape than we thought it was going to be several months ago. There's also his proposal to fund or provide districts with funding if they push forward with reopening, a proposal that was much more controversial and that I think districts will be beginning to try to understand over the coming weeks. We will have an update on the governor's budget proposal from our financial officer at a future board meeting. But I just wanted to report on those two developments in the state climate for education. And that is my report. So next is Vice President Dodd.
So my original report was to just remind everybody that the food service program is back up and running, and that I encourage everybody that needs it to take advantage of it. But after the beginning part of our meeting here, I feel compelled to say something different, so I will. There's an old saying that I think everybody's heard, where it's the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. We continue in this district to do the same things over and over and over, but we somehow magically expect for things to turn out differently. We often point out the inequities that exist within this district, but then we do the same thing over and over instead of addressing those inequities. We talk about students that aren't being treated the way they're supposed to be treated. We talk about what we see in the community. We talk about what we see with the police force. We talk about what we see in the classroom and outside of the classroom. We talk about all these different things that we see, but then we continue to do the same thing. We continue to hire the same people with the same perspectives who have been in the district for 20 years, 30 years, but we want things to change and we want things to be different. How are we going to get to that point if we don't bring in new perspectives, if we don't bring in new ideas, if we don't bring in new people? How are we going to be more diverse if we don't bring in diversity? And I'm not just talking about race. I'm talking about perspectives. I'm talking about ideas. I'm talking about things that will make the world different, that will make Albany different. But that's not what we do. We cherry pick the same people from the same city, from the same places, and we just plug them in different places. We take people who, if you were a principal here, and then we move you here, but then we expect for you to magically change everything that you were doing in the previous place. But that's not how it works. You have to bring in new people and new blood and new ideas if you want change, which is why we brought in Dr. Wells in the first place. Because I'm sure that the majority of Albany would have preferred if we just hired somebody that already worked here and just plugged them in like we do at every other position. But that's not going to get us to the goals that we want to see, or the goals that we at least pretend that we want to see when we're talking about certain things, or when we're putting flyers in our yard, or when we're wearing shirts, or when we're honking, or when we're giving the black guy that we know a high five. That's all the easy stuff. The hard stuff is telling your friend, hey, we love you, but we need to do something different for the sake of the city. Hey, you're amazing, but we need to do something different so that we can make things better. But we're not doing that. And we never do that because it's not easy. It's hard. We need to make a commitment to do the work that is hard, because I'm looking at the screen right now and it looks diverse because of the hard work that happened. Trustee Duran is on the board because of the hard work. It was not easy. When we ran for the school board, it went in order. President Hinckley got the most votes. Trustee Duran got the second most after that, and then I got the third after that. It went in order based on what? You can connect the dots, which means there's a lot of work that needs to be done. But we're not doing the work. We're just plugging in what's easy. And that's frustrating for me. It's frustrating because you can't have it both ways. You have to be willing to do things that are uncomfortable. You have to be willing to do things that aren't going to make your friends happy all the time, but it's going to make the district better. And we're not doing that, but we need to start doing it. And we need to start listening to everybody and not just some. And we need to start magically finding money for the students who are struggling the same way that we magically found money for this 10-year-old position. And now out of nowhere, now our budget has enough money to do it. But if you guys present one thing that cuts $1 from any student at the upcoming, but if you cut $1 from one student, we're going to have to replay this whole meeting, and you're going to have to explain to me how we magically found the money for this position that has been non-existent for 10 years, but we had to cut money from students, because it will be unfathomable to me. I won't understand it. It won't make any sense to me, because we magically found it. We pulled this from here and pulled that from there. And I know people don't want to hear it, and maybe people are frustrated with what I'm saying, but it's real. Because we magically find money for what works and what's convenient and what we're doing for our friends. But then we're making budget cuts that directly affect students. And there are kids that aren't eating in our district right now. There are kids that don't have the supplies and the computers that they need. There are teachers that don't have working internet. How are we doing new positions? We have teachers that don't have internet. We have kids that can't log on. We have parents that are losing their jobs because our schools aren't open, and we can't find any way to help them. But we magically found a 10-year-old position and plugged in our former board president. That's out of line. And everybody who played a part in it should be ashamed of themselves. That's not what we should be doing right now. There are hundreds of kids that are in trouble, and this is what we're focusing our time on. This is what the district office is focusing their energy on, and that's insane. And that's my board report. But But when the budget comes around, not $1 can be cut from one kid in this district. And not one parent should call me and tell me that they don't have absolutely everything that they need. And if they don't, the district should pay for it 100%. I will no longer accept we don't have the money for that. We're not able to pay for that. I'm not sure how that's going to look to the community because this looks insane. So I'm not accepting that anymore moving forward. So every kid in this district is going to get absolutely everything that they need, no exceptions moving forward, because we magically have money for new positions that haven't existed for 10 years. And we're basing it on communication. That's confusing to me because I feel like the communication is fine. I get all the emails and I read them. What I don't get is that there are teachers that don't have high performing internet and that classes get cut off and that kids don't get class for that day because their internet isn't working good. And that there are students whose parents are contacting me because they don't have the computer that they need in order for their kid to do class. Or that there are kids that aren't eating because they don't have the food that they need. We have bigger fish to fry, bigger problems. There are kids out there with mental health issues that are committing or attempting suicide. What are we doing with our time? I think everybody should take 5 minutes and close their eyes and really think about what's happening in the world right now and what we are actually doing here and what our actual purpose is here and why we're taking time away from our families to do this in the first place. Why are we all here? Because I think we're lost. That concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice President Doss. Trustee Duron.
Thank you. First, I wanted to thank you for your poignant comments, President Hinckley. I really did like what you said. You know, I'd also like to say to Vice President Doss that we all have our truths. And most of the time, you and I agree, but not all the time. And I can't judge other people on this board. I can't tell other people, make critical judgments about them, what they're doing or not doing. All I can do is speak to my truth and what I believe and fight for the things that I believe and hold sacred, which is our kids. You know, the rest is all peripheral stuff. And I think I'm not going to vote for incompetence ever because it's important to me. It's a standard that I hold, you know, important, competence. So I'm not going there. I wouldn't go there. I think you're talking about politics. And to me, friends don't count when we're talking about kids. I put kids first and last and in between. And so I don't want this to be a diatribe or something about each of us, you know, pushing back on each other, but simply to say that we all speak to our truths. And we do it really not so much by our talk, but by our actions. What do we do day in and day out as board members to address these issues? And I sort of wish that these comments or this would have been part of asking the questions to the staff. We have that opportunity every board meeting before to ask hard questions because I want answers and the staff knows I ask so many questions. And I want other board members to do the same because I was the only one that asked questions this past week. And then somebody else came later and asked some other questions. But it's, once again, it's not to judge anybody, especially the new board members. You know, you guys are new and it takes a while. But I think it's incumbent on each of us when we have these concerns that come up in every board meeting for us to ask the staff about these issues, make it clear before the meetings, because then it gives me time. It's food for thought for me, and I can start reflecting about it. But I'm very comfortable with how I voted tonight. And I think we're going to see some, you know, communication has always been a really key issue in this district. I'd say primarily for our parents in the community. And so I'm really looking forward to, or hopefully seeing a lot of work coming out of this. And as the superintendent says, he needs the support. If we want him to be successful, we need to provide him with the support that he needs to be successful. So that's speaking to my truth. And just two other comments. One of my truths is about land acknowledgement. It's important that we remind ourselves over and over again, Tlazoquamati, gracias, and gratitude in recognition that Albany sits on the territory of the Huichin, the ancestral and unceded land of the Chochenyo Ohlone. This land continues to be of great importance to the Ohlone people. We recognize that all of us in Albany continue to benefit from this land that we live and work on. Consistent with Albany values of community and diversity, we have a responsibility to acknowledge and work on our relationship with the Native peoples. The other comment I wanted to make is in line with Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Commemoration. I also want to let everyone know, in case you didn't know, that there's a celebration of the Fred Gorematsu Day of Civil Liberties and the Constitution on January 30th. It is especially relevant given what happened in Washington last week, because this gentleman spoke up. He was an American civil rights activist who refused to go to the government's incarceration camp in World War II. And he fought against the mass removal of Japanese Americans, which resulted in a landmark Supreme Court wartime civil liberties fight. So I want to be sure that we honor him as well at the end of this month, and hopefully teachers will be able to do something in their Zoom classes before that Saturday. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Trustee Duran. Trustee Boyd?
Hi, everyone. I would like to just say two things in response to what Vice President Daw said, and then I'll say what I intended to say before. First thing would be, even though I did not vote to approve this, the positions that we are talking about, I am hopeful that having this position filled will improve the communication from the district. And by that, I don't just mean sort of not exactly frequency or, sort of quantity, but outreach to members of the community, specifically groups who are advocating for specific communities in our community, which I may be commenting on later in connection with the special education report. But I do hope that that having this position filled will improve transparency and communication to members of our district, which I do believe is something that is important to a lot of members of our district and has been voiced previously. The other thing that I would say is that I would hope that any member of the community who is listening to this or who knows of someone, if you're listening yourself and you know of someone who could use any sort of assistance, certainly with regard to food, with regard to technology, whether we're talking about parents and families or whether we're talking about teachers, I truly would hope that people would feel that they can approach whatever members of the district they feel comfortable approaching, because I would hope that we can take care of each other in that way. And what I was going to say before was just to highlight the importance of having different diversity of perspectives, especially in what we're teaching our children, looking at what happened, the demonstration, if you wanted to call it that, the anarchy, the violence, the terrorism that happened at the Capitol building this past week. I appreciated the voices of whether it's people who are particularly knowledgeable about or connected to the sort of mob violence and terrorism that happened in Germany leading up to the Second World War, whether it's members of the Black community speaking out about the immense differences in how protests and demonstrations have been met by members of Black Lives Matter, Friends of the Black Lives Matter movement, whether it's members of the indigenous population speaking about how their protests and demonstrations have been met. So I would just give a shout out to our Diversify Our Narrative students and the teachers who are working on that initiative also, and just continue to say how important it is to be sure that we have as many different voices, as many different types of perspective or experiences at whatever table as possible, so that in the future when we're explaining what happened to children, regardless of what's in the textbook, if we can have voices who are the people who are making these decisions, if we have professional development, if we have people coming to speak, we need to make sure that all of these different perspectives are contributing to what we're remembering about this time and what we're teaching our children about this time. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Trustee Boyd. Trustee Davidson.
So I had a really wonderful report that I was going to provide, and I feel like it may be overshadowed a little bit, so I might decide to hold on to it for another week. I just want to say first in response, I struggled with that decision. I reviewed our board packet. I felt like I came up with my questions that I sent in their direction. Did not like the process behind that item, but in the end, Superintendent Wells said that that's our third goal is communication, and he has this happening to meet that goal. And I feel it's my duty as a board member, even a new board member, to provide him right now with a person he feels is most suitable to do that job. Now, I'll see how that plays out based on my decision there, but I don't want to go back and forth that I made a decision that doesn't steer our district in the right way by voting yes on that. I voted to give our district the tool that it says it needs right now, and I want to see how that plays out as a new board member. Now, I am going to leave us on a really positive note because this is something near and dear to my heart, and it's for our children. It is 100% for our children. So I reached out and this is the school I have connection with because I taught there last year, and my son is a student there when he goes back. And I reached out to the Cornell Green School Yard team. It's parents, parent educators, planners, architects, and gardeners who came together in 2019 with a vision to develop a vibrant public outdoor space at Cornell that fosters a connection to nature, nurtures play for children of all interests and abilities, connects classroom lessons to outdoor spaces, promotes mental and physical well-being. And this is what they sent me to share, and I feel like it's really, really important and beautiful. In a time of extended physical and social isolation, the team's resolve to improve the Cornell schoolyard has only strengthened. Led by parent Wendy Mock, a landscape architect at GLS Landscape Architecture, the Cornell GSY team accomplished the following projects in 2020. They hosted a community event with Sharon Danks, founder of the Green Schoolyards of America, planted an arbutus marina tree and habitat garden of California natives. The tree was selected for its hardiness, physical beauty, and drought resistance. They designed and constructed child-sized redwood benches, worked with the district to repair outdoor water access, and installed an irrigation system to establish plants donated by GLS Landscape Architecture and parents Scott Richardson and Davey Trier. installed large galvanized metal planting containers outside the first grade classrooms, replaced the old handball wall on the west side of the shipping container with new plywood, and painted a heart mural. Their upcoming projects for 2021 include providing more shade, play, and seating structures while continuing to maintain an edible garden and new plantings this year. The Cornell GSY team's accomplishments are the result of many community members coming together to donate time, supplies, and expertise. The bulk of our labor and funding is provided by the Cornell PTA with the cooperation and coordination of AUSD staff and administration. Local municipal programs and Buy Nothing groups provide free soil, compost, mulch, and plants. We also rely on numerous local businesses, including generous donations from Channel Lumber and East Bay Paint Center, and discounts from East Bay Nursery and US Soil and Stone. We are truly grateful for our community partners. We are proud for the small role we have played in enriching the Cornell community. And I would add to that, the entire Albany community that is accessing that as an outdoor space. As we move towards returning to school and hopefully more outdoor learning, I'm really thankful that we have this small little movement going on in our community to provide a place where our children have a more level playing field or a more level garden, where we can foster that imagination and creative learning and soften their play a little bit so that they can all take a little softer approach with one another and find those spaces of beauty and calmness. And that's my board member report, sorry.
Great, thank you so much. Student board members. Please.
Thank
Lost
you.
Leo. Yes.
I first wanted to add on to the meal plans that Vice President Doss briefly mentioned. To give specifics, free meals can be picked up at the AHS multipurpose room on Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays from 11:30 to 1:30. And it's free to all children 18 and under, regardless of enrollment in the district or eligibility for free and reduced lunch. And then also the high school has finals week next week, which can be a stressful time, especially during online learning. So Albany High School is continuing the tradition of having Wellness Week in replace of Dead Week to focus on students' mental, social, and physical well-being. So this week there will be counselor drop-in times, meditation, breathing exercises, and healing broth recipe making, and much more, which is all put on by AHS staff. And then I also wanted to report that as the insurrection at the Capitol was brought up at this board meeting, teachers have done a really comprehensive job of taking time out of class to discuss the events. So students are able to share their opinions and discuss what is happening. And I know anecdotally this has happened in not only government class and English class, but also I've discussed it in my computer science classes and other classes. So yeah, I'm very grateful, and I know other students are, for teachers spending time to discuss that.
Great, thank you so much. Thank you all of you for, I learned so much in all these reports and really appreciate everyone's honesty and forthrightness about where they're coming from. So we're now on item number 12. We'll take comment from people on matters not on the agenda. So just as a reminder for those who have your hands raised, if you have a comment on an item that is coming up on the agenda, you should hold off until then. Comments that are made during this segment, the board is not able to respond to, discuss, or act on because they are not items that are already agendized, but we might make referrals to staff for comment or consideration on a future agenda. So we'll take the first public comment from Jeremiah.
Hi, good evening. I'll do my citizens report. The Albany Library has free Wi-Fi, just in case there's students that don't have internet, they can go to the Albany Library. I want to give a shout out to Mr. Hill, Ed Hill. I don't know if anybody remembers Mr. Hill. He's a wonderful art teacher. And that connects with an art project that's going to be coming up in Albany on Albany Hill at the intersection of Castro and Jackson. I believe the Friends of Albany Hill are trying to put this on. if there's students that can't afford the $10 to participate, I will sponsor any students or anybody wants to get involved at $10 each. I'll sponsor that. Also, Martin Luther King's birthday is actually January 15th on Friday. Also referring to 9-4, how can somebody donate? If I want to donate to food service or textbook instruction materials, how do I donate? I want to suggest a future agenda item, school zones be placed on the future agenda item. Brings $100,000 to the budget. Also, we can get our students into the Spring into Haiku and Albany program. And speed bumps on Cornell and Talbot I'm working on. And the 2x2x2 meeting, I suggest a district office and the new plans at the UC. And also a shout out to the school lunch program Monday, Wednesday, Friday. There are a lot of unskilled cooks and they're doing a great job. And one last thing is the teachers, if the teachers could drive by students' houses and just wave from their car and say hi to the students, I think they'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Ashley Reynolds.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hi, great. I'm actually, this is the first school board meeting that I have attended, and I was a student at Cornell many, many years ago, and then Albany Middle, and then Albany High. And I'm really glad this was the one I came to. I would like to say that I really appreciated all of your guys' comments there at the end. The passion for the students feels very palpable. The reason that I joined this meeting was actually to name that I have a book offering that's coming out that I'm really excited as a, Albany native, Bay Area native, and social worker, as well as a Black mixed woman of color. I feel pretty passionate about putting a book out right now for children that has foundational skills and therapeutic techniques that kind of tells a story of a coming of age kind of experience for a girl named Blue. It's whimsical and it's in print right now. The title is Little Girl Blue and the Not So Ordinary Boots, set to be released February in line with Black History Month. And so I actually was encouraged to come and share that by a friend. And I also would give a shout out to him who did the public citizen report, which I thought was very kind. So thank you for inviting me, Jeremiah. And really, I'm very grateful to have listened to you guys. I really appreciate the passion you're bringing to the district.
Thank you so much, Ashley. Next, we have Stephen Naif, who, as a head of the ATA, I don't think we need the timer. But.
Thank you. I actually have a very brief ATA President statement. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Great, thank you. Dear members of the board, superintendent, and Albany community, along with our community, ATA is reeling from the attacks on our capital and democracy. Along with the pandemic, recent events have dramatically affected our thoughts and actions. And I'd like to take a moment to thank our teachers, district office staff, parents, and community members who have given the gift of time and caring to have meaningful conversations with each other and our students about this terrible event. We can get through this together. Concurrently, the pandemic continues to surge. Our hope, along with the community, is to have a safe return to school. And there are promising fiscal and vaccination plans forming and being implemented at state and local levels, which we hope will help during this time. Vaccination is an important part of a larger puzzle. Our COVID tier, the district safety preparedness, and negotiations will also need to fall into place to get us back to school safely, not only for students and staff, but the community as a whole. Every day, I am thankful to be a part of this amazing community, working for an amazing district, teaching amazing students. We can get through this together. Thank you. Sincerely, Stephen Naif and Chris Knight, ATA co-presidents.
Great, thank you so much. We now move on to item 13, staff reports. We have one report tonight, which is the special education report.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, President Hinckley. I appreciate the opportunity to bring to you via our Executive Director, Alexia Ritchie, our staff report tonight. And so I hand the baton to you, Executive Director Alexia Ritchie.
All right, well, thank you so much. And thank you, Superintendent Wells and President Hinckley and members of the board. those of us joining here tonight. I'm actually going to be working in conjunction with our special education director, Dr. Cynthia Ortiz Front. And we have a number of slides that we'd like to present to you. So at this time, I'd like to introduce Dr. Cynthia Ortiz Front, who will walk us through some of the slides and then have some time for questions at the end of her presentation.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you very much. And I want to start off by saying that this slide presentation was really presented to welcome our two new trustees, Trustee Boyd and Trustee Davidson. So I want to acknowledge that it is very unembellished and it definitely lacks the elaboration maybe that other people were hoping for this special education staff report. I did receive a nice email from our partners, the Albany Disability Squad, who was hoping, I think, for more information to be brought out this evening. I got that email last night, and I'm sorry I did not have time to revise this slide presentation. It had already been put out. So I wanted to just introduce my presentation with that. I fully intend to bring more elaboration and more embellishment to fill in more specific information. But this presentation is really a welcome to our two new trustees, to the world of Albany Unified School District Special Education in a very basic way. So welcome and thank you as I go through this. Also, as an acknowledgement to Vice President Doss, I am new blood in the district, and thank you for that. And I bring new ideas, and just a little warning, I'll be asking for some new approvals for my program, because I have very, very big plans for special education and the enhancement of it for the Albany Unified School District. So I just wanted to say that that touched me in many ways, Vice President Doss, when you were talking about new people coming in. So I did want to acknowledge that. So if we could please have the next slide. So here in the Albany Unified School District, I just wanted to give an overview of the students. We currently have 346 eligible students. These are students with an active IEP that are receiving services. We have 45, and this is approximate because honestly, this changes by the day as far as someone who could be referred and become an initial pending student. Pending students are students who have been referred and their parents have, they've been sent an assessment plan. Their parents have given us permission to do a full evaluation. And after all of the professionals do the evaluation and the IEP is held and eligibility is determined, these will possibly become students that will become eligible students. Some students, for one reason or another, may qualify for some services, not for others. So I can take questions afterwards to elucidate that a little bit. We have resource classes at all of our campuses, and that would be K through 12. We have special day class at our preschool, our elementary, our middle school, our high school, and a program I have to say I hold very, very near and dear personally, and that's our adult transition level. And I want to just take a little bird walk for a minute for my adult transition students. The grains of sand are going through the hourglass for everyone, but for this group especially, their IDEA ends at age 22. And so this is a group that I have been putting equal, if not a little bit extra, help getting service to, because this population will age out and they will have to find new ways of going through the path of adulting as special education students. So I will gladly take questions about that population as well, but I do want to shout out, because we sometimes forget about our students who are 18 to 22 years old. And we, as I say here, we do serve preschool through age 22. If I could get the next slide, please. So this is this is a special education overview of our staff. We do have 4 special day class teachers, and those teachers are at the preschool, at the elementary, at the middle school, and at the high school level. We have 10 resource teachers. We have 1 adaptive PE specialist. We have 2 occupational therapists. We have 41 paras that are an integral part of our special education team. We have 1 adult transition teacher who serves our students ages 18 to 22, along with some of our paras. We have 1 inclusion teacher who is really all over, but predominantly at two of our sites. We have 2 program specialists. We have 1 behavior analyst. We have 1 department secretary. We have 6 speech and language pathologists. We have 1 assistive technologist, and we have 4 psychologists. 2 of our psychologists are on maternity leave right now. And these are all district employees that I'm overviewing right now. And we have, as I was saying, we have 2 of our psychologists who are on maternity leave right now. So in addition to those 2 psychologists, we have 2 district psychologists, and I'll talk a little bit more about the other contract staff that we have assisting us right now. Could I get the next slide, please? A few of the program updates, and again, this is so bare bones for an update of a staff report, but we have secured contractors to conduct speech and language, psychoeducational, occupational therapy, and speech evaluations. Our psychoeducational evaluations are offered to all families if they're comfortable in person, virtual, or through what we call a file review, which would be a complete evaluation looking at what's being done in the past. This would be offered for our older students only, perhaps 8th grade and up. This would not be really offered for a student in elementary school. And this is based on parent preference. So we make contact with our parents before we send out our assessment plan or permission to test form, so that we're clear before we enter into the assessment process what we're collaborating with parents to do to get children evaluated. These evaluations include the following. We have a backlog from the shelter in place of initials and triennials, and we are working diligently through these. I can happily report we have a full staff to work through all of the backlog, as well as our overdue triennials. Triennials are required full assessments that are done every 3 years for eligible students. And we have staff secured for new initials as well, which have been presented after the initial shelter in place time. Currently due initials and currently due triennials are also going to be fully staffed now. And of course we have future. We have our students who have their triennials that are due in February, March, April, May, June, and we have to work on these as well. Right now we have had to bring contractors in to do that due to the limitations of our staff not being able to perform in-person evaluations. So we are fully staffed now to do all of our evaluations. Next slide, please. Our hubs, I wanted to give a little bit of a history. For our special day class students, we initially offered social emotional hubs at Albany Middle School, and we were hoping to expand this. We secured space at Cornell for our special day class hubs. These were going to be instructional hubs, but what we came to find is that that site was not suitable due to the infrastructure. It's an older location, and unfortunately did not have the ventilation and the ability to be as safe as it needed to be for students to be gathering in hubs. The process continues, looking for suitable sites, looking for sites that are congruent with the students. For example, when we offer hubs in the coming weeks, which will be integrated in with our general ed hubs that Dr. Wells talked about earlier, we want to be sure that we have the right size chairs. If we're going to have students come to an elementary school, we don't want to have little first grade chairs for middle school or high school students. So we're working on that, as well as the safety issues that include ventilation, proper gear, and plexiglass, whatever we need. And we are looking forward to reopening. And when I say when allowed, when we can find, and we're working on this, the ability to integrate all of our students who are in need to be able to come back for the hubs. Next slide, please. So next steps and questions. So when I took this position, I had, like everyone, no idea that this pandemic would extend to the reaches of what it's extended to. And it came in wanting to strengthen our multi-tiered systems of support, our learning, our special day class offerings, just so many things that unfortunately have been eclipsed by the delivery of FAPE during the pandemic. So we, of course, have ongoing compliance checks. And the ongoing compliance checks are not just local audits that are done within office. These are done in collaboration with SELPA and, of course, with the California Department of Education as well. So what we really are working on is securing more staff as needed for evaluations that will need to take place, as well as for our hubs. So to not take any more time, I'd like to take any questions that anyone has. And thank you for the opportunity to give an overview again, albeit not as embellished as maybe some people hoped for.
Great, thank you so much. So I recently learned that president is supposed to do everything last. So I will open up for discussion and questions from all board members before we move to public comment. And I see Trustee Corzo Clark has his hand up.
Thank you, President Hinckley. I was just wondering if we could go back to the slide with the overview of staff.
Yes.
If the psychologists and occupational therapists were also linked to like the mental health department and those services, or if they were just for the purpose of diagnosing students.
Thank you very much for asking that. When we do an assessment, whether it's an initial or a triennial every 3-year evaluation, usually it would be under the purview of the psychologist to do social, emotional, and mental health screening, even if there has been no concern about it that's been put forth. So on the permission form, there is a box that we always tick that says social emotional, and under that category, that with parents' permission, that allows us to give basic behavioral and mental health screenings. If a student, either initial or an existing student, has any, the family, the student, teachers, whoever, child find, whomever, has any mental health concerns, we will do more specific evaluations, such as the CDI, the childhood depression inventory, the Mackey, the anxiety index that we would give, or any kind of concerns around suicidality or anything else like that, we would give more specific measures. And that's usually under the purview of the school psychologist. Thank you for that question.
Vice President Doss.
Oh, thank you. I just have a few questions for the social emotional hubs at the middle school. What's the criteria for the hub? How do students get invited? Where do they take place, and who's leading them?
Thank you. So when we initially offered these social emotional hubs, it was offered to our special day class at Albany Middle School. Let me start there. And then instructional hubs were not yet being offered, but social emotional was going to go first. So letters were sent out to parents in that class asking if they would be interested in their children's participation. So there's reaching out to the parents to ask about the social emotional hubs, which that will continue as we start to build our hubs back again. What my hope and I believe our shared hope is and plan is to not just offer social emotional hubs and instructional hubs to one specific classroom group, but to all of our students who are in need of support in that area.
And then my additional question for speech and occupational therapy, what's the status of these being offered in person in regards to the evaluations and the assessments?
Thank you. I'm sorry, Vice President Doss, did you have a little bit more to add on to that, or?
Oh, no, I was just going to say, I know that the actual speech and occupational therapy is not currently happening in person, but I'm just worrying. I was asking specifically about the evaluations and assessments.
Okay, so just to first give a little overview, our current staff is offering all of the therapies virtually. So speech and language therapy, that's occurring virtually. Occupational therapy, that's occurring virtually. Counseling, if it's in the student's IEP, being offered virtually. Now I'm going to pivot to talking about assessment. We have secured 2 speech and language therapists who are able, trained, certified, and vetted to be able to perform legally defensible evaluations via virtual testing for initial eligibility and for students who have their triennial evaluations. Just this past Friday, I'm thrilled, in fact, to report that I have secured an occupational therapist who will be evaluating students in person. Occupational therapy is a much more difficult skill and ability to evaluate via Zoom or via distance learning. And so our new person joining us will be doing that in person in our clean room. Yes.
All right. Trustee or Vice President Doss, do you have anything else, or we can also circle back?
I have more questions, but circle back.
Okay.
So other people opportunity.
Okay, great. Trustee Duran.
A couple of questions. I'm not quite understanding hubs and why, I guess hubs was going to be our success while we weren't in person, but it doesn't seem that the hubs we had, the specifically one at the middle school, and I don't know if there were others, why they weren't successful. And so I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about that. What are the factors? What do you think's going on there? What do we need to offer or do differently?
Well, I appreciate very much your question, and it's been personally frustrating for me as well, in that, first of all, in order to offer the hubs, we need to have personnel. So that means at this point, going to a staffing agency to be, in addition to whatever staff we can get, to have enough people to be able to support students at all levels. So, of course, as everyone knows, in special education, there are students who may need a very high level of support as far as even their physical needs, eating, toileting, things like that. And there are students who need a high level of support. And by the way, this is not mutually exclusive at all. It overlaps all the time. Everything intersects. Who need a high level of support with the academics, with someone who's able to keep them on task when they're doing their distance learning. The biggest frustration has been the personnel. I did get approval from the board, and I'm very, very grateful for this, to hire a staffing agency to help bring in more people. That staffing agency, they imagine all the districts vying for their people, right? So we had people and they were moved and they were grabbed. And some of the individuals no longer felt comfortable being in person. So this became like a moving matrix of how do we do this, do that. So I want to say the hubs, I really wish could have been better than they were. And my hope is that moving forward, they will be a lot better than they were.
The second question is, well, I actually should ask you just to follow up on the hubs, which is what things are you hoping will be better? I mean, I'm trying to imagine, you know, how really can we make these work? What are some of the elements you're thinking of that will help make the hubs more successful?
I really, previously the paradigm was looking at special education hubs. I really like this more integrative model of hubs, and how do we integrate all students together to be part of hubs. And I'm hoping in collaboration with more than just my department, my staff, that widening this is going to allow for the ability to offer hubs for a greater number of students needing all different kinds of support.
Okay. My second question, I did send this question in, and it might have been sort of difficult to respond to it. And I'm wondering if you could kind of say, because I'm really trying to grapple with this, because I have been invited to a couple of regular classes at Marin Elementary School by the teachers. I was really pleased to be there because it really gave me an opportunity to really see what's going on in the Zoom and how much energy is required on the part of teachers, very different than regular classroom. And I'm wondering, with all these different contractors that you have on board to help support you with the assessments, et cetera, can you kind of describe what, for example, the resource specialists, teachers are doing, the inclusion specialists, the special day teachers? Can you kind of describe for all of us what is going on? Are they doing one-on-ones? Are they doing Zooms with one or two kids at a time? Are they spending an hour with one kid and then another hour with another kid? I don't have a clear sense of what's going on.
Thank you very much for asking that question. It's not a question a lot of people ask. And special ed, I've worked in special ed for a very long time. And it's something people know about and don't know about. So I really appreciate you really getting granular on this. Depending on the age of the student, the model of delivery, the type of service the student needs, it may differ. So for example, at the elementary level, there may be something that's delivered one-on-one. But at the high school level, with the number of students enrolled and the number of students that have IEPs, some things like mental health counseling may be offered one-on-one. But when it comes to resource, that probably would be more in the form of a small group or a class, or it wouldn't be delivered in a one-on-one model. To get back to your first question, our very hardworking staff are still delivering services to all of our students with IEPs in the same manner as best as they can, working just as hard as their fellow teachers in delivering services. And imagine a class that requires a breakout room where a para has to go in with the students into a gen ed class. This is so multi-layered. And I have to say, this has been a very big learning curve for many, many people who are excellent in person and know our best people, I mean, that anyone could ever hope for. But of course, if one is not used to delivering that service through Zoom, and even if they've been supported to do it through Zoom, it may not be helping the student in the way that it was helping the student in person. I'll be really, really honest. That's what's been degraded by the distance learning, as we all know, and is creating what we all are acknowledging as a learning loss. So OT is a great example of that. If you're with a student and you're giving manipulatives to the student, that's a lot different than when you're trying to convey and help a student with fine motor issues via Zoom. It's absolutely, how do you take something that's three-dimensional and put it into a virtual world? This is the challenge. But I guess in summary, what I want to say is our special education staff has not skipped a beat. Our psychologists can't assess, but we have our psychologists. We have our two psychologists are working diligently to help us with our initials. How do we get the students who were left behind in March and bring them to the front? How do we collect the information? Let's say it's a high school student. How do we collect all those teachers' emails, the Zoom links for all those teachers, so our contract psychologists can be able to observe them via Zoom and create an assessment along with the testing that they're doing? This is really a team effort, all of this. And it's very arduous, I'll be really, really honest with you, for all of us.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Trustee Davidson?
So I'm really excited to hear that you secured someone to do the OT in person. I think that's a huge step in the right direction, and I'm really curious. I'm really, really impressed. So thank you for sharing that with us. It's a really good step. I'm also really curious to find out more about this clean room that we have. I haven't heard about this yet, and I think that's an amazing step. I'm going to throw something out here and just see if we can start bouncing some ideas around. I feel like I'm following Vice President Doss's lead here and saying we got to shake some things up. So we've got para educators, many of whom work one-on-one with a kid. Can they not meet with those students outdoors one-on-one? Seems like such little input. Can we not get creative here and find a way for those paras to be with those students with the Zoom computer in front of them outside so that they're supporting, we're giving parents that respite care that they may desperately need, and we're giving those students someone who's more trained to support them? I know this is a long shot and we've got negotiations and all of those levels to work with, but if you can figure out how to get us in-person OT in a clean room right now, can we start shooting for the stars a little bit here and start getting some more of our kids some safe, limited input? Because let me tell you, I'm nervous about this hybrid with all the inputs, especially for this population. But I think that this is a population we need to really start getting that more trained resource and support. So I'm just going to throw that crazy idea out there and hope that maybe we can start a discussion around this.
Yeah. So first I want to talk about the clean room. At the Albany Children's Center, we have been very fortunate to use a room that is large enough, well ventilated enough, has plexiglass, and that is a room that we keep a room usage schedule of for all of our different providers. It's cleaned before, during, and after. No one enters it without having, their temperature taken. They fill out questionnaires. Their parents fill out questionnaires. So we've done a really, really good job in being able to create a space that's large enough for safety. So I'm really, really happy. And I think it's a great idea to piggyback on that concept to be able to bring the hubs together. That requires space that's large enough and well ventilated and infrastructure to do that. So thank you for that. So I wanted to.
I'm really gonna, sorry, can I interrupt one time?
Certainly.
I'm really gonna push that we look at our outdoor spaces a little more for getting anything started, so that we're not always saying we've got to find the indoor space. And that seems to be in my discussions tonight across the board. That's our holdup everywhere right now, is where is this going to happen? So if we could just think about our outside for one-on-one meetings in good weather, we can be flexible.
So I wanted to address the second part of what you were talking about, and that's our paras. So just as our students receive different levels of intervention, perhaps one student may have a one-on-one para, but other students are multiple students being served by one para. Maybe that para is pushing in to a general ed class, but is supporting 4 other students. Part of what we've also struggled with is the scheduling. So in order to keep the schedule the way that it is for all students involved and for the synchronous learning, that requires, and this is what we're looking at right now, how do we bring back hubs that will keep the integrity of the synchronous learning and not take away any paras or any support people that would otherwise be serving groups rather than one person that they could serve indoors or outdoors one-on-one. So I think you have some really, really good ideas. As the weather has gotten colder, that is something we would have to look at. How are we going to maybe get some outdoor heaters? I'm just, I have to work with Mr. Borrego on how are we going to do all this and keep everyone from, not catching cold in these cold mornings. And so this is all absolutely important information that would have to be worked with in conjunction with our director, Mr. Borrego. So thank you for that.
Trustee Boyd.
Thank you, President Hinckley, and thank you, Dr. Ortiz-Front, for being here and providing all of this information to us this evening. I wanted to ask just a couple of questions about the social emotional hub. I wanted to make sure that I understand, because you discussed the difficulty of finding the appropriate personnel to be able to provide that to our students. So I just wanted to understand if we now have the necessary staffing that we are able to provide the hub, and also if it will now be offered to students besides those who are in special day classes, so that there's a broader appeal, especially since it was underutilized, it seems, before.
Right. The social emotional hubs in conjunction with instructional hubs, the plan is for those to be offered to a wider group of students. Absolutely. As far as personnel, I do have a little pot of money to supplement what we need. And this is where I come back and say, I may be coming to the board to say, I've just burned through that money in 2 weeks. So I'm going to be completely honest. I think Miss Kim, Jackie's off the call, but we were going through my budget, looking at, kind of, okay, what can we do with the CARE funds, the COVID funds? How can I bring personnel in to supplement what we have? That's the plan. That's absolutely the plan. So
about that, we're not going to limit your funds because we have money.
I'm writing this down. No, I'm just kidding.
Write it down, because we have money. We brought back a position from 10 years ago. So we got money. We're definitely not going to limit the money if you're talking about actually doing something that directly affects students. So let's not limit it because of money.
Thank you for your support.
Absolutely.
I want to make sure Trustee Boyd asked all her questions, and then
thank you.
Go around again. Sorry.
No, thank you. So I also just wanted on the social emotional hub, just wanted to encourage, if I don't know if any sort of outreach happened to families who did not opt to take advantage of the hub, who were offered the opportunity to do so, but just wanted to encourage outreach to families to make sure that we're trying to provide what is helpful to them and sort of, I can't think of the right, but shape what we're providing so that it has the most impact. And then the last question that I had was just around the assessments and evaluations where there's the backlog and then also some things that we need to catch up on. I just, it sounded as if, and this is great, like that you've brought in, been able to bring in some personnel that are able to perform some of those evaluations and assessments in ways that haven't been before, which is wonderful. I just wanted to ask or to kind of confirm that again on the staffing, if you feel like we're in a place where we are now able to kind of work through those backlogs, and if so, if there are any sort of goals or target dates for getting to particular milestones in that. And then lastly, just so you can say all the things at once, if it's possible to communicate those goals and targets to the families who are waiting for those evaluations and assessments, so it's clear to them that, you know, the district is prioritizing this and looking to meet these needs as quickly and efficiently as possible. Thanks.
Thank you. This is great. So now that we do have the staff that can evaluate in the different areas, so we started off securing psychologists, but psychologists can't do speech and language. They can't do OT. So now we have a full staff. So we are working through the backlog, and parents have been contacted. We've already evaluated, I can tell you, 12 kids that we're ready to have IEPs for. So we're working through this backlog. Everything is growing as we do it. So again, and I know that Vice President Doss is going to say, no problem. This is going to require another round of asking for time from the psychologist. We were allotted money to do 10 evaluations. That's $40,000. We've burned through it already. So we're going to have to bring in psychologists again. So all of this it's full steam ahead. We're not going to let money stop us, just as was said. This is all, you know, I've got my little sheets. I've got too many papers. The family's tripping over all my papers, you know. But yes, this is going to move full steam ahead. What we need to do is let parents know, okay, your child is in the next group of 5. I'm working with my team at the district office, and what we're doing is we're going through the list, trying to work through the backlog, and side by side, working with the children whose triennials are due right now so that we remain in compliance. So that may require that we hold an IEP meeting. We haven't yet even completed the evaluation, but we're getting it going. So parents are being contacted for an IEP meeting, and they say, hey, where's my evaluation? Well, to be in compliance, we've got to open the meeting on time. For our current meetings and our future meetings and our backlog meetings, we've got to prove to the state we're working on. So there's the accountability of all of this, not just with our local SELPA, but with the California Department of Education as well. So I came into the district, I started for the new trustees on September 21st. That was when school had already started. In previous districts that I was in, even when there was shelter in place, we were holding IEP meetings. The evaluations were not occurring. So every district has their backlog, and they've all kind of been grabbing for the evaluators. So we're really fortunate to be able to have the ability not only to have the meetings that were not had previously, but to now evaluate with a full staff to be able to do that. The communication piece is the piece I have to say we really need to pull together more. We have to do better on that. We have to let the families know, okay, your children are in the next 5. Then after that, and we have to have a timeline. And that's what I'm working on now that I've gotten the staff. So thank you very, very much, because that's a goal of mine. And I every single day want to be able to give an answer I don't have. Now I can give the answers. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I just wanted to say a couple things, and then I think we can open it to public comment and then come back and give each board member a chance to say other things. But I think while we're listening to public comment, you know, this is a staff report, so we're not voting on anything, obviously, but I think this is an opportunity for us to, as many of you have already done, reaffirm that we're very interested in seeing the hubs move forward. We're very interested in making sure you have whatever resources you need. I know there are some outstanding questions that the board and also community members have raised. So if there are questions that board members want to ask for a future report, I think this is also the time to raise some of those. I just want to say a couple things. I think one, I love the idea of us being able to see sort of a second semester plan, you know, even though planning seems very challenging right now, but it seems, you know, particularly for secondary, I think being realistic about most of these children will be staying remote for the remainder of the year, either because of family preference or because we simply won't be able to get secondary reopened. And even for elementary, we know that probably half our community will choose not to return, possibly more. So I think it would help the board to see a sort of strategic plan for the next 5 months of what you think you can roll out, what kind of resources you would need, and then how we ensure that kids that can't come in person are going to see some whatever improvements you think would be helpful over the next 5 months. And then along those lines, I think the communication is clearly important, but I'm also wondering about whether there has been, whether you've thought about a sort of survey to ask parents what they need and how things are going. And, you know, I imagine it's not just in person that's helpful, right? There may also be other improvements that parents could think of, or you know, or that you've thought of. So I think those would be helpful too. You know, we're very focused on hubs and returning to in person, but I think we need to not lose sight of improvements we can make now and learning from families about their experience being remote. So I think that's just a seed that I'd like to plant, and I can say more maybe when we come back. But I want to open this up for public comment. We have 3 minutes for each attendee, and then we'll come back and each board member will have a chance to wrap us up. So our first commenter is Kathleen Marte.
Hi, thank you so much for taking, is this question or comment? Can I do both?
It's however you want to use your 3 minutes.
Oh, okay. So it's kind of a comment and question, and it's in response to when I saw the staffing and that there was one inclusion specialist. And so my question is about what are the roles and responsibilities of it said inclusion teacher. What are the roles and responsibilities of the inclusion teacher? And do we have an inclusion specialist, one to support providing the least restrictive environment for our students? Because what I want to share is that my son Leo, who's a 10th grader at the high school, he's in the SDC class, but he also takes 3 to 4 GE classes a year. And this year in world history, his class was not, he was not given the accommodations that were outlined in his continue learning plan. And even though I emailed and asked and was begging over and over again for accommodations and modification to be supplied, they weren't. And he was having a really negative experience as a consequence. And so finally I had to give up, and he had to drop that class. And now he's taking an SDC class, history class. And so he's not being provided with the least restrictive environment. And I'm really disappointed about that, because if he had been provided with the accommodations, I think he would have gotten a lot out of that class. His peers would have gotten a lot out of him being there also. And so I'm wondering, what is the district doing in terms of ensuring that our students are being provided with the least restrictive environment, ensuring that the GE classes are being modified appropriately? Like, what is the plan there? Do we have an inclusion specialist to support the teachers? Because the general ed teachers do not seem to grasp an understanding of how to do it at all. And it can't be solely put upon the special ed teacher, because the special ed teacher doesn't know the curriculum that well. So that's my question and comment. Thank you.
Let me chime in. Kathleen, Martha, first of all, it's good to see you. In the future, when we go through the process of making your request, and there is, and as you know this, your kid is not getting the services as spelled on the IEP, there's a process that we go through, and I'm the last stop. So when that happens in the future, just for your own record, it comes to me. I have the authority to assign and make sure your kid get the resources he or she needs effective immediately. So although you didn't do that this time around, I'm saying this to the whole public so that folks can be familiar with the process. And it also brings me to the point of perhaps we have to publish a basic simplified booklet for our special ed parents about how to navigate around these kinds of issues so that your kids don't have to be adversely impacted as you just described. And I'm sorry to hear such a sad story, but we take these matters seriously. And when folks appeal and go through all the ranks to get to my office, I do respond and give resources, and have before for these situations. I wish I heard of your situation before tonight, and much earlier, it would have been resolved. But we're going to look at where we have missteps so that no other kid has to be subjected to that.
Thank you. We'll move to our next public comment. Jeremiah?
Actually, President Hinckley?
Yeah.
I'm new to this, but do we need to extend the meeting?
We can finish this agenda item and then we'll extend, yes.
Perfect, thank you.
Hi, thank you for allowing me to speak. This is Jeremiah. I don't want to overstep my boundaries here at all or try to get people involved that maybe it's not their proper chain of command. But I know Miss Ritchie has a lot of probably good advice on the resource program. I would always want to run everything through Miss Ritchie just to hear her public comment, because I think she has a lot of experience and she's a kind-hearted teacher. And I hope all the resource teachers in Albany are as wonderful as Miss Ritchie is. Also, I believe there's a lot of special ed or resource students that may have learning disabilities that are unseen. I don't know if you're familiar with unseen learning disabilities. I know there's physical disabilities, which go hand in hand with learning disabilities. You know, it says you have 300 and so many pending, 346 eligible students and 45 pending. I just want to raise awareness that there's probably students that do need extra assistance that are maybe embarrassed to ask for other assistance because of their peers, to make fun of them that they're in a resource class. But if there's a way to send a survey or something to each student, that way they can reply back, even maybe without their parent knowing or other students knowing, that they can get special assistance as well, that they're maybe not put on the spot, you know, oh, hi, I'm in a resource class. It takes a whole period out of my day, you know, but just be aware that there's probably a lot of students that resource, you know, really could be helpful. One comment was regarding the psychologist or therapists. I was wondering if the health insurance regarding, you know, money or something, if the school board has health insurance through Kaiser or something, that maybe some of these doctors or people could be covered by insurance. So maybe that would take care of some of the budget. But yeah, I would just always just try to do what you can for special ed and resource classes, because it's very helpful. These students are young now, and whatever you could put into them right now for one day is going to help them years and years and years down the road for their life. So please keep up the good work. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now hear from Cheryl Thies. We lost her, I think, unless she.
No, I'm here.
There you
Can
are.
you hear me? Hi,
Yes,
good evening. Hi, everybody. My name is Cheryl Thies, and for the new board members, I am an Albany parent for, 40 years. My oldest is Dean of Admissions at Berkeley Law, and my youngest is 14. I'm also an education advocate at the Disability Rights Education and Defense Fund. We are the parent training and information center that serves Albany Unified. And in addition to that, I'm a proud member of the Albany Disability Squad. So a couple of things. First, I just want to hop back to Ms. Marte's comment a moment ago and just really urge the district to provide Dr. Ortiz-Front with the resources she needs to actively monitor what's going on. Because my problem with the response that Kathleen got is that it puts the impetus on her to solve the problem. And of course, she's a very active and involved parent, but we have parents who are working out of the home, who aren't able to monitor what's going on and so on. So I really urge the district to be the ones to be monitoring what's happening and seeing on the ground whether our staff know how to do this. It's so challenging, and I respect what they're trying to do, but we have a big gap to close in terms of how to do this. Secondly, I just want to ask what we're doing to really track whether students with disabilities, especially our students with IEPs, which regardless of whether learning is distance or in person, the U.S. Department of Ed has been very clear that the IEP still needs to be delivered, can be delivered differently, but the same goals, the same services, and so on. How are we monitoring how our SPED students are doing, our special education students? Are they meeting their goals? Do we know? What percentage of our overall students with an IEP met most or all of their goals so far this year? How many of our high school students with disabilities have earned their credits after the first semester? So really just to urge you to be gathering that data so that we can make data-driven decisions. And then finally, I just want to give a shout out to Dr. Ortiz-Front, because I've had the opportunity to work with her on a couple of very difficult situations, and I found her to be very responsive and flexible. But I just want to really urge the board to support her, particularly in the area of inclusive education. This is something that, this year has been challenging on a variety of levels, but in this respect, I think that her vision of helping and making sure that students who have an IEP are in their least restricted environment is so important, because, and I just want the board to know this, you may already, students who are in inclusive settings, whether they have a disability or they don't, and we know there are always children who might have one that's not been identified yet, students who are in inclusive settings where teachers are co-teaching and where general education knows how to support our students, those students all do better with disabilities and without. So I urge us to be looking at that, and thank you.
Thank you. Neri Castillo-McIntyre.
Good evening, board, and Happy New Year. I hope you can hear me. And I'd like to officially welcome from the Albany Disability Squad, and during a live meeting, the new board members, Melissa Boyd and Veronica Davidson. And we'd also like to congratulate Sarah Hinckley on becoming the president of the board. I am actually shocked that under these circumstances, you stepped up to this role, but good for you and good for us. A few questions for the board. One of them, generally speaking, I'm not sure how, after these staff reports, how much more knowledgeable the board generally feels about what special education is and is not. And one of the things that I think about is, for example, in the success or lack thereof of the hubs, there has been a lot of emphasis on social emotional support, but special education is at the center, at its heart, education. It's about academics. The social emotional part is very important, but that's not the centerpiece of it. And along the lines of how much learning the board gets about how special education works, for example, at the next update of this, it would be great to see a gap analysis about what the IEP and 504 requirements are for each student, what the staff quote unquote inventory is to meet those requirements, and what the gap is. And then you would be seeing real data rather than whole numbers or percentages that by themselves do not mean anything to anyone. So for example, along the presentation that we saw today, you hear that there is a backlog, but what is the backlog? And how overdue is this backlog that we're talking about? Another piece of information that is missing is how many non-public school placements do you have in the district? And what is the cost associated with those placements? And as importantly, how does the district monitor those placements to make sure that they are indeed successful and they are serving the needs of the students in those placements? And lastly, since part of the conversation earlier today was about Dr. Martin Luther King and his fight for civil rights, I would like to remind the new members of the board and the current board and the administration that the laws associated with special education are all civil rights laws. And it is your duty to see to it that they are enforced. Thank you.
Thank you. Amy Appel.
Thank you all. A lot of my questions have already been covered by my colleagues, Cheryl Thies and Neri Castillo-McIntyre from the Albany Disability Squad. But I do just want to reiterate how very important I think it is that we focus on the students with disabilities making progress on the goals that are in their IEPs. We don't want this to be a lost year for these students. They're so very vulnerable to begin with. And, you know, I'm not sure that the amount of compensatory education that they might receive over the summer will be adequate to catch them up to where they might have been otherwise. And this has been a lost opportunity. And I'm just really disappointed that there's no sort of academic hub for students with from the special day classes especially. I would also like to know an exact number of students who've attended any of the hubs so far. Surely we have this information. Can you please tell us what those numbers are? And you know, I want to raise sort of a related issue that doesn't fall exactly under the legal definition of special education, but there are many students in the district who have 504 plans, which is part of general education. And these are students with disabilities. So I would really like to see it if special education and general education could pool their reporting so that we get a more clear picture of the district's services to all students with disabilities, not just the ones with IEPs. That's all for me. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much. One more, Elijah Tsai.
Hello, esteemed board members. My name is Elijah Sai, and I'm a fellow student of Audrey Mala and Leo Corzo Clark. I just wanted to quickly appreciate their presentation earlier in the meeting. I was in a call with them when they were making the presentation after attending a 12-hour civic engagement conference, and it was a really stressful time. So just wanted to shout out and say thank you to both of them. They're doing a wonderful job.
Thank you, Elijah. Always time for shout outs to our student board members. So I want to let board members have another chance to weigh in. I will note that so March 23rd, we are scheduled to have our next update from the special education director. So you'll have an opportunity to add questions for that in between now and then, but this is an opportunity to provide any additional guidance about future reports, or I think I would also be interested in, speaking to this question of what resources you need, Director Ortiz Front, if there are things that you want to say to us about how we can support the many sort of challenges that you face, both in obtaining staffing and identifying how to grapple with some of the challenges you've raised tonight. If there are things that you think the board needs to hear or that you would like from the board, now is also an opportunity for you to raise that as well.
Thank you very much. I first want to give a very big thank you to Dr. Wells. Dr. Wells is probably the best superintendent I've ever had, who supports special education and understands special education and understands the needs. I know that if I go to Dr. Wells will support me to be able to put forth what my requests are. And I do trust that in the spirit of everyone wanting all students to succeed, that I will have everyone's full support. So I was being a bit cheeky earlier on, but I do have to say, for all of these services to come together during this pandemic, it is going to be expensive. And that I know that Dr. Wells and the board will and all my colleagues will work to make that happen. And I appreciate that very much. With regard to what was being said earlier, I do want to maybe end on a positive note by saying I have developed a system that will allow, in collaboration with our wonderful Dan Haller, a system that will allow for general education teachers to be able to know which students have IEPs and be able to look at their accommodations in a confidential way. It is very important to me that it is disseminated to all special education staff, and it's no one's fault, and these are difficult times, but there needs to be something other than handing an IEP to someone, which we used to do. There needs to be a technological way for the information to be accessible to all the educators so that the accommodations that we want to be implemented will be understood. And I have a plan for a professional development day to further go into implementation of IEPs with our general education staff.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other board comments, questions?
I did have a couple other questions, but did somebody else want to go first?
I just
You can go first.
I think Trustee
Or you
Boyd.
can all go at once.
Trustee Boyd had mentioned that we need to extend the time of the meeting.
We can finish this agenda item before we extend it. Yeah.
Go ahead, Trustee Corzo Clark.
Thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to respond to Kathleen's public comment. As a student that has my own accommodations, I know how frustrating that can be and how necessary those accommodations, whatever they may be for a student, are to just like functioning in a normal learning environment. And so it's really shocking and frustrating to hear that a student was just outright denied repeatedly those accommodations to the point where they had to drop the class, because that's a very real fear that many students with accommodations have, that has sadly been a reality. And so I really hope that there's measures taken afterwards to correct those actions and hold that teacher accountable at whatever level that may be. Thank you.
Thank you.
Trustee Doss, do you want to go, or do you want a minute?
Oh, sorry, my laptop was dying. I got to find the charger really fast.
That's okay.
Yeah, I was hoping to get some. I was hoping to get a timeline and kind of clarification on the hubs. I know there's been some discussion and some talks about it, but I was hoping to. I took some notes here. Just to kind of clarify the plan for the hubs, and then maybe discuss a timeline. And then I also had some thoughts around kind of going off of Trustee Davidson's plan of, being outside and doing that. They have these portable gas heaters. I know it's cold right now, but they work really well. And so we can purchase those for all the locations that we're going to be using, and make sure that kids and staff are comfortable. And then also going based off some of my other comments during my lengthy board report, doing an assessment of all of the technology that everybody is using, and making sure that everybody is maximizing their ability to provide the best that they can. So, if there are teachers that need to upgrade their setup at home, the district providing the funds necessary for them to be able to upgrade that, or making sure that they have, if they have like the second Wi-Fi has a certain amount of bandwidth, maybe providing them with the funds to upgrade that to the fastest one, just to make sure that they have, everything that they need. And then for Dr. Ortiz front, I just wanted to say that it sounds like you have a lot of needs that need to be addressed. And so I just wanted to offer my time to sit down, or in this case, to log on virtually and just listen to the things that the ideas that you have, just to make sure I have a clear understanding of what it is that you need, so that we can get those things on the agenda and vote for them, and get the students what they need. I'm hoping that we can get that done as quickly as we get other stuff done.
Thank you very much. I appreciate everyone's support. And again, I know I have Dr. Wells' support, and I think we're all going to sit down together to see how these hubs can happen as soon as possible.
Great.
Yeah. As for I'd like to just I'd like to really in-depth plan and timeline, so that parents can start to make plans of their own, for the hub. So the sooner that we can work on that, the better, so that parents can and students can plan for that. Sorry about
that. Trustee Duron.
Dr. Ortiz front, I know that I heard it said that you're going to be back on March 23rd for another update in special ed. And I'm hoping you would be able to include in that presentation your plan or your ideas about how to engage more the general ed teachers. I heard you said that you have a professional development idea there, but I'm wondering about the other strategies and things, because for the last couple of years, I've heard from parents, they're concerned about how to engage more, or how to be sure that the general ed teachers are much more up to date with the kinds of techniques, you know, the multi-tiered systems approach, where their students will be more supported in the general ed classroom. So I would like to hear a more in-depth plan regarding that going forward.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Trustee Boyd.
Hi, I just wanted to encourage the district staff in whatever ways are possible to reach out to members of the community who are advocating for their children who have learning disabilities, special needs. The Disability Squad comes to mind, but it doesn't necessarily just need to be representatives of that group. But you know, certainly I've been told that the board, I'm going to get it wrong, we don't do the how, we just say the we just say the what, we don't say the how. So however, in whatever way it's possible to do that, so that there is just as much communication and transparency as possible, and so, you know, everyone can feel like they have a voice at the table, and so parents aren't feeling surprised every few months when X, you know, data is available, or those types of things. And thank you, Dr. Ortiz-Front, for all of your information.
And I appreciate all of the input that everyone's given. This is what informs me, and you know, pulls more creativity into the ideas that I have. So I'm very grateful for everyone's input and support.
Great. Thank you so much, Dr. Ortiz-Front. I have a lot of notes about follow-up for the short term, and also for our March 23rd update. And also there are 2 board members on the Special Education Advisory Committee. Is that what it's called? So we will keep moving this work forward. And there may be some board updates in the next week or so, I think, about some of these timelines. Oh, Julie's back. So we do need a motion to extend the meeting. We have one more item, which is the reassignment of school board members to school sites and committees, and then future agenda items. So I will entertain a motion to extend our meeting.
I move to extend the meeting to 10 p.m.
A second.
Okay, I'll do a roll call vote. Student Board Member Corzo Clark,
Yes.
Student Board Member Mala,
Yes.
Trustee Duran,
Yes.
Vice President Doss,
Yes.
President Hinckley.
Yep.
Trustee Boyd,
Yes.
Trustee Davidson.
Yes. Also, I'm sorry, I can't get my video to go on. I'm trying to log back on my other device, so I apologize that it's off.
No problem. We are going to be looking at this list of committee assignments. So I don't know if you're able to see the screen, but we can, if not, we can read things off to you. So we'll start with.
I can see.
What? Okay.
I can see, I
you
just can't, you can't see me.
Got it. Should we start with committee assignments? So normally we did make some of these assignments, or we did some of the in August when the school year started, but then obviously we have new board members. So we're doing it over again. And I'll sort of talk through each. Are we doing committees first? Julie?
Yes. Would you like me to pull up the live sheet? This is the.
That'd be great.
Okay, one moment. Okay. Can you see it?
We can see your screen, yeah.
Great. Okay.
But it's not the
It's not the
live
committee
sheet yet.
Okay, one
No,
moment.
you just got to go over one tab, I think.
Oh, all right, hang on. Sorry. Oh, sorry about this. Okay, how about now?
Perfect.
Okay.
Okay. So I will just say a couple things about some of these committees. So the 2x2x2 is not one that we make assignments for. Board members do a rotation through the year. The board policy committee does meet regularly. Trustee Duran can answer questions about what that committee does if anybody's interested. The budget advisory committee also meets regularly with more frequent meetings in the spring as we begin to discuss the upcoming year budget. The career technical education committee has been on hold for some time. If we want to take up a discussion of what happens to that committee, we would need to do that at a future meeting, so we can come back to that after we get through this agenda item. The Environmental Action Plan Committee is a committee that has been working on various issues related to sustainability and other issues now related to climate, such as air quality challenges that we've been having associated with wildfires and so forth. The Fundraising Advisory Committee consists of the PTA presidents as well as the heads of other fundraising organizations and has been moderate, I think has met a couple of times a year for the past couple of years, at least since I've been on it. The Local Control Accountability Plan Committee works with Assistant Superintendent Williams on the development of the LCAP every year, although the LCAP process is a little wonky, so either Trustee Duran or Assistant Superintendent Williams could speak to what that will look like this year. The Marin Elementary School design team is not meeting regularly anymore, although I do wonder if we should continue to have 2 board members designated to participate in that process in case anything comes up during the build process of Marin. And then we've had 3 temporary committees focused on reopening for elementary, the middle school, and the high school, which are self-explanatory perhaps. The Special Education Advisory Committee works with the Executive Director of Student Services and a group of parents and teachers on issues related to special education in the district, and has been meeting every other week, I think, or maybe monthly. The Student Achievement Task Force was formed last fall by the superintendent. The Wellness Advisory Committee has worked on issues like school start time and mental health issues. And I can't speak to how frequently that committee has been meeting or how active it is, but perhaps one of the existing members could speak about that. And so those are all of our committees. And as I said, some of the continuing board members just came on board these committees last fall, but I want to give everyone a chance to speak to first whether they're interested in remaining on the committees that they're on, and then what committees they would like to participate in going forward. So we can start with the board policy committee. So we have one continuing board member who could choose to stay on it, and we will need a second board member to volunteer to participate. Trustee Duran, you've been on this committee for 2 years now?
Yes, I have. I would be willing to continue unless there are 2 other board members that really want to be on this committee, because I need to share.
Does anyone want to express interest in the board policy committee? This is the group that does the fun work of figuring out how we actually implement the things that we talk about in ways that are enforceable and measurable.
I would join Clementina if we need somebody else to do it happily.
And we do revisit these every year, so people do get a chance to participate in hopefully most of these committees over your tenure. Okay, why don't we move through and then we can do any adjustments at the end if we need to. The Budget Advisory Committee, I am currently the chair of this committee, so I would like to continue, but I also would really like a partner.
I'm happy to participate in that one.
So we will not do the CTE committee, the Environmental Action Plan Committee. Also a lot of fun. There are students, there are environmental activists from the community.
I'm very interested in that one.
I can stay on if need be, but also happy to move off. The Fundraising Advisory Committee, this is a group that has talked about things like how to leverage our resources to make sure that all schools are benefiting equally, as well as how to sort of be strategic about fundraising, given all the different groups that we have. It's a great opportunity to work with other community leaders who are trying to support our schools. We can come back to this one. It's only a couple of meetings a year. So the LCAP committee, very important. To continuing members can talk about what's so important about it and whether or not they'd like to continue.
I actually would like Marie to describe it because, as you had mentioned, it's changed because of the COVID. And so she might be able to speak more about the plan for this year's plan and basically requirements of how many meetings there would be, because there haven't been. Well, there was one earlier this year.
Yeah, thank you very much, Trustee Duran. I'll speak briefly. So typically the LCAP Advisory Committee begins meeting in January and meets monthly through about the month of May. Typically the process involves first looking at what is in the current document and then reviewing updated student data The committee also reviews the stakeholder feedback that we collect. Typically, we collect that through about the months of February and March. And then the final task of that committee is to give input on the draft that would come before the board for a public hearing at the first meeting in June, and then approval at the second meeting of June. This year, as has been stated, because the LCAP process was suspended due to COVID, we leveraged that committee, in fact, to support the approval of the learning continuity and attendance plan. And so there were a couple of meetings in the fall. We do know that there's going to be a requirement around an annual update, which is a piece of the LCAP that typically comes in June. We know that sort of some of the different requirements are sort of having different approval dates. Just in December, the board approved a budget overview, which typically comes in June. So in terms of sort of what the actual LCAP process looks like, once we get more information about the requirements, we would then need to work within sort of the time constraints, sort of between now and June, if that's the timeline. But I anticipate maybe sort of a second year of sort of an adjusted timeline for us to work on a document, and then sort of maybe getting back on cycle in the following school year, which is 21-22, I believe. So in general, one could anticipate attending, 5 or 6 meetings for 90 minutes, reviewing stakeholder feedback and giving input on student data and or potential goals, actions, and services prior to public hearing and board approval.
With that being said, I would like to continue on the LCAP committee.
And unless any other board member really wants to be on it, I too am willing to continue, interested in continuing.
Great. So who was on the Marin Design Committee before? Or has it been dormant for too long?
I was on it, but last round of selection, Brian was on, Vice President Doss was on the committee.
Okay. It may be that we don't need to put anyone on there if it is going to be dormant, but if the two of you are willing to participate if something does come up and Director Borrego needs to reconvene that, would the two of you be willing to be part of that?
I would suggest, do we have any current board members that have students at Marin currently? Because I don't. So maybe if Trustee Boyd wanted to swap with me as a backup, because I think she still has a little one there.
I do indeed have a child at Marin, so I'm happy to be available to that committee if that's helpful.
Okay, thank you. So the reopening schools committees, because these just started in the fall, I think the two of us who are still here should continue rather than making a switch mid-year, but we will need someone to join the elementary schools reopening committee, which has been further along than the other ones because it already came up with the proposal that we all saw a few weeks ago. But I do think we need someone to be willing to serve in that capacity.
Is there a time commitment overview on that one?
Superintendent Wells, do you can you speak to whether there's a sort of timeline or plan for future meetings for that committee, or what that time commitment might look like?
Yeah, we just put out a schedule that I can resend. We're meeting twice a month, every other Wednesday. And Our next meeting is tomorrow evening from 6 to 7:30.
So I'm willing to.
You're talking, I'm sorry, I just want to clarify. Superintendent, I think you were speaking about the Achievement Task Force, no? And President Hinckley is talking about the the elementary school reopening committee.
Okay, I have to pass that one on to Marie. Marie's running that, and they're concluded their meeting. They may reassume. Our Assistant Superintendent, Marie, you may want to give an update on that, but that task force has dissolved. I don't know if you plan on bringing it back because of some unfinished business.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think that we would like to retain the option to bring that committee back. Some questions that came up at the time of approval, we'd like to be able to refer back to the committee. So in terms of time commitment, I would say maybe 2 to 3 meetings between now and the end of the semester. Certainly we don't anticipate holding regular meetings. We were meeting, I believe, once a week for a month, but I don't anticipate that the schedule would be anything as aggressive as that. But I think we do want to retain that committee in its entirety in the event that we need to refer something back to that group for ongoing input and feedback.
I'm happy to do that then.
Great.
And thank you so much for providing all that.
Student board member Mala, sorry, I just noticed you have your hand up.
Yeah, I had a comment about another committee. If I can do that after we go through, if that's best.
Yeah, or you can do it now. One we've already gone through.
Yeah, I just had a comment about the CTE committee. I think that, I know it's on hold right now, but I think a big, when we've surveyed students in the past, post-high school, and CTE is a big want from students. So I think bringing that back in sometime in the future would be really beneficial.
Right, I'm gonna add that to our notes for follow-up from the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you.
So now I think we are down to the Student Achievement Task Force. No, sorry, the Special Education Advisory Committee. So this, I don't remember if we've been meeting every other week or every month.
It's monthly, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Time goes so fast.
Right?
Yes, it is monthly.
I have been participating basically the last 2 years in one form or another. So if another board member is really interested in wanting to participate on that advisory committee, I'm willing to step down.
Can we move to the Student Achievement Task Force? I just want to get a sense of what folks are willing to do, and then we'll go back and fill in the open spots. So we have 2 continuing members on that. How, maybe Superintendent Wells, you could say a little bit about what this committee is working on and what the expectations would be for the rest of the year.
Yeah, this committee is getting to the heart of how do we address our most vulnerable kids using data to inform our footsteps. Currently, we have on the committee, and it's a newly formed committee, and I suggest we stay the course, where we have Melissa Boyd and Trustee Melissa Boyd and Trustee Clementina Duran. And we're meeting twice a month up until March. And our goal is to bring recommendations to the board so that we can align and identify priorities in terms of what our most vulnerable kids need in order for us to close that achievement gap. And so this is where we get to do some of the heart and soul of that work. and being intentional about making sure we addressed the gaps, both social, emotional, and academic.
Great, thank you. So you're saying Trustee Boyd and Trustee Duran will continue on this committee?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, great.
I was originally the chair of this committee. So how does that work?
I don't know. Superintendent Wells, can you speak to that?
Trustee Doss, I thought you fell back because we know you had some wonderful opportunities and challenges with the newborn. And so while you were out, we were filling the void. I think what I'm hearing you saying, you're ready to come back?
No, it's fine. It sounds like you guys are settled in.
But we love to have you come back anytime. And any insight you can give, just pick up the phone or email, because we appreciate some of your insight.
Yeah, you can just put me on as like a backup or something. It sounds like you guys are settled in with that. So
you got it.
Great, thank you. Wellness Advisory Committee. We have two folks who can speak about what that does or express interest in continuing. We did finally get the school start time moved thanks to the state legislature. So I don't know what else is on that committee's plate, but
I think our executive director, Alexa Ritchie, could speak to that momentarily.
I'll let you know that this committee meets 4 times a year. We've had 2 meetings so far this year. Our meetings have focused on the reopening plans. We've also invited our epidemiologist, our consultant, Dr. Trivedi, to join us. Our next meeting is February 22nd. The final meeting of the year is April 26th.
I would like to continue on this committee if possible.
Thank you.
is anybody else interested, or Trustee Doss, are you interested in continuing?
Actually, I'd like to open it up if somebody else wants to join in there.
I can join that committee.
And if Melissa joins that one, I'm happy to jump in on the Special Education Advisory Committee. Or vice versa, Melissa, if you have a stronger interest in the other direction.
I'm good as it's currently getting typed in there, but thank you, Bonnie.
You can keep me on the Special Education Advisory Committee unless Trustee Duran wants to stay in there. I've only been on it for a year, but
yeah, that's fine, President Hinckley.
Still, I think did we fill everything up? So we just have the Fundraising Advisory Committee, which hasn't met yet this year. All right, I'm gonna say we leave that open for now, and then Superintendent Wells, you can always convene it with board members choosing to attend at that time, and we can figure out what the role of that committee is going forward.
Yeah, and then we could just remove the name. Julie noted that we moved the names that are not applicable anymore. At least it's somewhat updated.
So you can leave my name on there, Julie, and we'll circle back to the CTE committee at a later date as far as what role that plays going forward. So I think that's it for these. And then we need to go through the school site assignments, and then we'll vote on these all as one item. We're missing, oh no, it's just below there, the high school. Yeah. So I'm gonna say up front that I would like to move to the Albany High McGregor site because I've been participating in the reopening discussions. And I think I'm the only person with a high school as well. Just to have some continuity in that set of conversations around the high school. But maybe we could each say what our first preference would be, and then see if we need to make adjustments afterwards. Yeah, Vice President Doss.
Well, since I got booted out of all my committees, I'd like to move over to the middle school if there's no objections from the other trustees.
Opening committee, so I think that'll be really helpful to have that continuity.
I would be happy to be
I would love.
assigned. Oh, sorry, Bonnie.
Go.
I was just going to say I'd be happy to be assigned to Marin, as I have a child there, as we have discussed.
And I'll jump on Cornell for the same reasons, if that's okay.
Trustee Duran, are you okay moving to Ocean View?
Of course.
Great. Which will be a brand new school very soon.
Very good.
At the Albany Children's Center, because I know you just took that assignment this August, so.
Yeah, or I don't know if Trustee Davidson, since she has a little one, littles, if she's interested in that.
I mean, I can. I don't want to overcommit myself yet. Would it be possible for us to split it for right now and start that way? Would that be okay?
I could just do it. Because
Well, you have a lot on your.
I'm not on any committees, so.
Well, you want to take a committee for me and do that, or I'm happy. Also, I don't know how it would work to split one of these roles, but I'm happy to do that as well.
I don't want to take a committee from anybody. It seems like it's already set, and I don't want to split it either. So I'm happy to just take it.
I'm going to give you this, and I'm going to say I'm happy to be a backup if we need it ever.
Yeah, that's all good.
President Hinckley, I like to push back on two issues in the spirit of we support all kids. Trustee Boyd and Trustee Davidson, your kids see you often. I think it might be healthiest just if you guys flip-flop and don't do your own kids' schools on this one, and do the other schools because we support all kids. Brian, we only have one middle school, so I can't push back on you.
I wasn't gonna.
You weren't gonna budge.
Actually, no. I like it the way it is. I mean, I think that everybody has a vested interest, and I think that it'll help keep everybody motivated. I don't really think we should change it.
The Trustee Boyd and Davidson, if you want to stay where you are or switch.
I would prefer to stay with Marin if possible.
Okay.
Maybe after this year, when we have a better idea what this looks like, then we can mix it up for the next year to keep our interests all over the place.
Well, it looks like we have everything covered.
In 3 or 4 years, so you get a sense of how the whole district works. Great. So we need a motion to approve the new committee and school assignments.
I move to approve the new committees and school assignments.
I second.
Student Board Member Corzo Clark,
Yes.
Student Board Member Mala,
Yes.
Vice President Doss,
Yes.
President Hinckley, President Hinckley.
Hear me?
Yes. I'm sorry, I couldn't hear your vote.
What's wrong with my audio?
I see a thumbs up. That's a yes. Okay. Trustee Boyd,
Yes.
Trustee Davidson,
Yes.
and Trustee Duran.
Yes.
Can you guys hear me now? Yes. Yes? Okay. I was trying to say yes before. Great, thank you. That passes unanimously. So we now can take items for future agenda meetings. We have some follow-up on special education. We have follow-up on the CTE committee. I don't have any other items from my notes, but board members, please propose agenda items if you have them.
If I could just, Mr. Pinguelo, he had sent a letter, I think, to all of us, indicating his interest in participating in a city committee. And I know there's a process, and I don't know that we've really done it, or I don't remember having participated in the last couple of years. And I'm wondering if we can get the staff, if staff could be so kind as to maybe bring to our board meeting next, I don't know why I can't talk, it's early, to our next board meeting, the list of those committees from the city that we get to recommend people, and so that we can discuss it and open it up to our community, because our parents may not know about it, so that we have let everybody know.
Can you hear me? So that is on our agenda for January 26th to review the appointments to the city council bodies that we get a seat on. And there's a little bit of confusion about whether we get to appoint someone for the Social and Economic Justice Commission, because they just changed that. But that will all be coming to us January 26th. And the way it works is people apply to the city, and then those applications come to us. The city collects them, the city announces to the whole community that the positions are open, and then we review the applications that are received. Thanks for bringing that up. Yes, Vice President Doss.
I'd like to make a suggestion for future agenda items. One being a review of the board trustee stipend. And I'd also like to suggest workshops for trustees and staff. I'd like to discuss a combined workshop And I'm happy to kind of go over those in more detail during the agenda setting meetings. But I have some ideas around that. Thank you.
Any other agenda items? Oh, we did have, sorry, public comment on our last agenda item. So we'll take that and then we will adjourn. Jeremiah.
Hi, good evening, everybody. Thank you. Yeah, I really am happy you got my email. My public comment is for this last agenda item here. I was wondering if the career and technical committee, I was wondering why it's on hold and possibly figuring that out, because I think it might refer to Zoom. Everybody's classes is technically on Zoom. Also, I was curious if some of the Albany High School students on this committee were able to be on some of these subcommittees did. And also there was a 2x2 meeting yesterday, and I was wondering who attended that yesterday. Oh, it says my internet connection is unstable. I was wondering who attended the 2x2 meeting yesterday on the school board, yesterday at 10 a.m. And if they're going to be doing all this new construction at UC Berkeley, adding to the Giltrack Farm area, we're going to need more crossing guards, and I'll try to work on that as well. Education committee for, career technical education committee for future discussion. Please. Yep, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeremiah. So the board members that were at the 2x2 meeting on Monday were myself and Vice President Doss. That does rotate every quarter. And we can always use more help trying to get crossing guards. With that, unless there are other agenda items, we will be adjourned for this evening. So I don't see any other hands. This meeting is adjourned. Have a safe week. See you all on January 26th.